Pro wrestling. To the uninitiated, it's oddly popular play fighting. Oddly popular play fighting that can be a little gay. But to those who know it and love it, pro wrestling is the epitome of the dramatic struggle inherent in competition, sports, and our everyday lives, while still being a little gay. But if you ask me, it's not the matches that make wrestling as awesome as it is. Sure, they're probably the most important aspect, but if that's all that mattered, then Ring of Honor would have been the #1 wrestling organization in the world 20 fucking years ago. No, it's the stories, and more specifically, the feuds. The rivalries between men and women which transcend normal disagreements and make that inevitable encounter that much more anticipated. Maybe a guy was being racist and then smashed a dude with a coconut. Maybe a dude accused another dude of having sex with his dead girlfriend and then simulated that sex act on national TV. Maybe it's just about Japanese shampoo. Who cares? We fucking care. Because today we're going to break down our favorite rivalries across the history of sports entertainment. It's our favorite wrestling feuds. This week on Nothing Good.
Gentlemen, we have made it. Episode, what is this, 49?
49.
49.
I cannot believe. Nice. I can't believe that we've been able to do this. Now, about to be 49 different times, not counting the wonderful yoga experience in Master Fap Theater, which I hope everybody's been enjoying, the off-brand humor.
I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, typically when we take a week off and leave Noah to his own devices, we end up with said yoga and said Master Fap Theater, which we don't feel bad for at all. We're happy that everyone else gets to experience it the same way that we do.
You know what's great about Nothing Good Yoga? Is that was like the fourth idea Noah had.
It was.
It really was.
I make no apologies. Listen, dear sweet listener, I look for any opportunity to sexually assault you via audio airwaves, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to keep doing it every week.
And we're here for it.
Guys, I have a fucking announcement. I just realized I dropped the fucking ball today. So, dear sweet listener, I was at a wedding shower earlier today. Yes, I was at a wedding shower. It was a combo, everybody invited kind of a deal. And as a handout, as you were leaving the wedding shower, they gave you a succulent that I named Peru.
Are you serious?
I'm not fucking joking. And I meant to fucking bring it.
That's amazing.
And I forgot it at the house.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
I forgive you, but that's awesome.
Wait, now, Succulent Peru is the band.
Yes,
Yeah.
Succulent Peru is the band.
So can the Succulent be just the logo for the band?
It is now.
Yeah. That should be on a shirt.
It is now.
Of some
Speaking
sort.
of shirts, the Succulent Peru World Tour shirt is available on our merchandise store.
Yes.
None of you have bought it yet, but we'll get
It's
there.
there.
It's there for you to stare at.
So at this wedding shower, in which there were a number of my coworkers, including my boss was there, I had to explain to everybody why I was going to name the Succulent Peru. That was an experience.
That sounds.
That
good.
was.
That's like all of a sudden.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we can't put this on his employee review, but we should have.
So, gentlemen, we're here to talk about our favorite feuds of all time, which I'm real excited about. But I'm even more excited about talking about what we're drinking today. Mr. Brown, what you pounding?
Oh, wow.
And what are you drinking?
Isn't that the question of the day? So, I am drinking a mandarin and mango crush from Dogfish Head. It is deliciously crisp and citrusy.
It sounds really good.
It is quite tasty.
And he was nice enough to share. So the rest of us, with the exception of Doc, is also drinking Mandarin and Mango Crush. According to the label, it's a crush cocktail reimagined into a citrusy sipper brewed with mandarin oranges and mangoes.
Yeah.
It is quite refreshing.
And it delivers.
It is.
It is quite refreshing. It is a good summertime beer as we are moving into the official start of summer.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
So
It is a good beer for the end of June when it's still decent enough to be outside,
Yes.
Yeah.
but not
Yes.
not too sweltering to wonder how much ass is going to be swamped and how quickly.
It's already begun.
I think my ass was swampy when you guys had me abducted in your basement for about 4 weeks when I first started
That's
recording
standard.
podcasts.
that was in the fall.
When you
just real
passed
hot down
out
there.
due to loss of fluids, I sponged you down there just to keep you moist. You know.
Well,
Stock, what are you
Moist
drinking?
Doc, what are you drinking?
yeah. How about that? I'm drinking from good question. The Equilibrium Brewery Wavelength, and it's an IPA, and I'm drinking it because there are certain individuals here who take trips across the spectrum of madness, man, and they go and they crush Hulkamania, they crush the Hulkamaniacs, and they feel the wrath, they feel the madness and the colors and the feelings, man. And so it's a kind of a Macho Man deal, you know. When the Mega Powers, before they imploded, when they came together, people could taste colors.
That was
According
mostly
to them,
the
or they were
that was
tasting
the
Coke.
cocaine.
I'm not
a lot of
sure
the
which
cocaine.
one
It
they were
was definitely
tasting.
the cocaine.
But yeah, I'm drinking a little. It's called Wavelength. It's really good. I don't really know any other way to explain it. But it's good.
My favorite
Yeah,
part.
it's
Sounds
good.
great.
My favorite part of your Randy Savage impersonation is what the audience couldn't see. It's that you did the handshake.
Dude, you
from
gotta
Mega
do it,
Powers
man.
Handshake in there.
And then they basically I don't know, they orgasmed together a little bit when they shook hands.
They docked. It was the first on record of docking.
It was. It's like
terrible.
I remember when I remember seeing that the handshake and everything, and it was like that time when we were the Catalina wine mixer, when Adam Scott and Will Ferrell are gonna hug each other, and you just don't quite know how to do it. And that's the same kind of a thing when Hulk and Macho Man were trying to get that handshake in, and just how long it took to kind of get it in there.
Get in there, man.
Cinched
Oh
in.
yeah.
But when they got in there, we all felt it.
Oh,
They
we
were
all-
yeah.
we all did.
Maybe the
I was
cocaine,
born that day.
Maybe the cocaine makes your fingers into cocaine magnets. Where two magnets can't touch, they keep going off to the side. Maybe that's what was happening.
But yeah.
Could've.
Well, we are talking about our favorite wrestling feuds, everybody. And before we get into the feuds we want to talk about, I think there's some important questions that you asked everybody. And
Oh, yeah, right off the top. I'm just going to put this so we can think about it if you haven't already thought about it, and as we kind of discuss, because your answer may change as we discuss things. If you could pick any two particular professional wrestlers throughout time, doesn't matter what time period, tag teams, singles, male or female, and put them in a feud together, what would that feud, who would those two people be? Or two teams or whatever be? I think, I already know who I think. But I'm going to kind of leave that to a little bit
save
later.
it to the end.
Yeah. But I think if you had a dream matchup, because honestly, and this leads to my next question, but it's not so much about who would have the best match. Well, Bret Hart and Daniel Bryan have an excellent match.
I mean, yeah,
but
that's got to be almost
what would the
everybody's
story
answer. and I
really
won't
be,
fucking know the
right?
story.
At what stage would you pick Daniel Bryan? Right? At what stage would you pick Bret Hart? There's a difference.
Yeah, see, there's I that was the thing that I was really cognizant of when you asked that question about what stage of their career would you want those guys to work? Because you can sit there and there are some feuds that we have seen when the guys were in their 20s that maybe we'd want to see again when they're in their 30s that maybe we weren't able to get because wrestlers moved on, wrestlers got injured, maybe some wrestlers unfortunately passed away too untimely. But I think that really plays an important part in that question.
Yeah,
is
for
exactly when.
Yeah, so that's the biggest part. So
Yeah.
think about it, whatever. But this leads to the first real question we can really talk about, is I think in theory all of our answers will be kind of the same, but maybe slightly different. To you, individually, what makes a great feud? Not a good feud, a great feud. Because there is a big... Listen, wrestling history is filled with good feuds. Somewhat memorable. I mean, you watch any particular TV show at any given night, and it's filled with nothing but feuds.
Yeah.
But what makes a great feud?
Yeah, what's the one you're going to remember?
Mac, what do you think, to you, makes a great professional wrestling feud for you?
So the first thing that I always think about when we talk about what makes a great feud is, I think, time. I think that's one of the most important things that when you kind of look back on some of the iconic feuds in wrestling history, you look at the history of those wrestlers together. And I think the longer that wrestlers have an opportunity to kind of work together, kind of dip in and out of the feuds, you know, they're on the same side, they're tag teams, maybe they break up. You've got matches over years where there are circumstances that constantly bring them back together. Those are the feuds that I remember most. It's just, and I think when you have guys, and this is some of the things, and we talked about this a lot too as wrestling fans, as they, Sturgis just drives by.
Hog Wild, Road Wild,
1997.
Sunday.
Bischoff. Keep going.
We have this thing that comes up at WrestleMania every year where it's like, okay, we're 3 weeks to Mania, and 5 really important wrestlers don't have a match.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we have to put somebody together with Seth Rollins and hope that it works. And you hope that but they didn't take... They're not going back to a match that happened in May or June of last year that has kind of cycled through or maybe kind of come back where so-and-so remembers what that guy did to them in that match that screwed them, and he's just, I think you need to have that kind of time, because I think when you have investment as a viewer, you want that feud, and you'll ride that feud for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do want to bring up, because it's not going to be on anybody's list, because I know everybody's list, but the only clear-cut example I can remember to myself of a people that don't have a match for Mania 4 weeks ago that they actually said, hey, remember way back when, is when Randy Orton wrestled CM Punk at WrestleMania, and they're like, hey, remember 6 years ago when Randy Orton cost CM Punk with the long hair the world title at a scramble and Unforgiven? Punk remembers, and now they're fighting him out on WrestleMania. It's like, okay, shit, okay, that's
a good point.
Just digging
way to
that
throw
shit
it back.
up.
Yeah.
But, talking about how WrestleMania can do that, an example of WrestleMania starting the feud, and that's the one that I've been most interested in right now, has been Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes.
Yeah.
That's been phenomenal to watch. And, of course, obviously you couldn't do anything with Cody and Seth prior to Cody signing, and then, of course, they started Mania, but they were smart to not let that be a one-off match. They were smart to kind of let that keep carrying.
Yeah.
And I really want to... And I've been really enjoying... I mean, it's no secret that I was not a huge Cody Rhodes fan in the day, like way back. He's a good talent, a good hand, as they say, but nothing special. But the man... But I really...
Man didn't wear knee pads back in the day.
It's still...
dangerous.
It bothered the hell out of me.
Shit out of you, man. Every time we would watch a match...
Yeah.
When
It's
Cody
like,
was
who does
first
that?
coming up
Lots of
with
people do it, but I don't like
DiBiase
it.
Jr. Yeah.
But to watch him, and I really started really digging him with the Dash and Cody Rhodes, where he was like, his face was destroyed, but it wasn't really, it was all in his head. And the character growing, and then him, Stardust really dug that, and then him going away and becoming his own man. There's a saying that old timers have, that sometimes you just got to go away and learn a new hold and come back. And these days, you can't really do that. There's nowhere to really go the way it was in the territory days.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you had, you go to somewhere in the NWA, the AWA, you go, you can go down Georgia, you can go
Florida,
Continental. There's a bunch of places you can go and learn new things.
one of his daughters.
And
Go to Japan.
you get
Go to Mexico.
Go north. Go to Canada. There's a bunch of places you could go and learn a new hold, and so people can't get tired of you. But the Vince McMahon and company have seen that that's not a thing anymore. But Cody Rhodes was able to do that, and increase his equity, increase his value, and has become such a big star. And watching him have such great matches, and then with the whole injury and him still performing on the level that he did in a great match.
It's unreal.
Even with his stupid neck tattoo.
God,
the stupidest neck
If it ain't the
tattoo.
knee
It is
pads,
the worst.
it's a
Cody's,
damn neck
I mean,
tattoo.
and I'm gonna try my hardest not to take the piss out of Cody Rhodes, because this last couple of months has done nothing but impress me.
Yeah.
And making me change my tune about him. But he's still got to do something to fucking piss you off about himself. He's just like, because he takes himself so serious all the time. And I don't know how somebody could get up in the morning, roll off with their hot wife into a pile of money, look in the mirror and go, you know what I need? A stupid fucking neck tattoo.
Do you know why?
Looks like I got out of a quarter machine at a mall.
You need that stupid fucking neck tattoo because of who your father is.
Yeah.
And there's never... If you're Cody Rhodes, that is the... I mean, is there a wrestler that has ever had to wrestle in a bigger shadow than he does? In the history of wrestling?
Not yet.
I mean,
Charlotte.
Yeah, but Charlotte, though...
She has the album because she's in a different gender.
She's in a different, yeah.
But I mean, I just mean in terms of who's your dad again?
Yeah.
Oh, the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
But
but Dusty Rhodes is more universal. I think universally beloved than Ric Flair.
Oh, when are you talking about beloved? I mean just in ring ability and just a legacy.
And no disrespect to Charlotte, and no disrespect to Ric Flair. That's a whole separate conversation for another day, because they are two different styles of competitor. So they don't get. But the American Dream didn't. He had two things going for him. One, he had the promo, and that was his main thing, and that's all it is. And two, he had that thing that not very many people ever have had, which is believable face comeback fire.
Did you say baby fat?
he did say baby fat.
I did.
Believable baby fat. Yes.
Yeah, believable.
It was very believable.
He never left him. He never left
that.
Yeah, he kept it in a jar when he got skinny as he got older. But no, but I mean that's that real comeback, right? So it's an honest to God babyface fire and the promo skills, and that's all you needed. No, Cody's got more than that in his tank. But yeah, it's a big hurdle to overcome.
Plus, Cody wants what his dad never had.
Yeah,
such a good story,
and that's what and that's what wrestling fucking needs right now, is that there aren't enough good stories. And I say, as we kind of go into the conversation we're going to have here today about feuds, they all have a good story, don't they?
The big thing about feuds is, so we have these guys who are super talented. They have larger than life egos and characters, but they can't get to the top by themselves.
No, can't do it.
Nope. It takes two to tango. And without a good story, you're not going to get the momentum. You're not going to get the love and the buy-in from the crowd that you need to elevate from here to here. And that, I mean, being able to have that with the guys who are on our list that we're going to go through here in a few minutes, like that's what wrestling fans yearn for.
Yeah,
right.
You're right.
I think for me, a great feud, and again, it kind of leads back to the feuds on my list. But to me personally, as a fan, what makes a feud great and not just good is there has to be equal parts a personal issue and a professional issue, right? Mm-hmm. There has to be personal stakes and professional stakes, right? So I mean, but sometimes you can get away with you don't have to have a personal stake. You know what I mean? Like Hogan and Warrior, for example, were two baby faces who didn't necessarily dislike each other. They didn't get along necessarily, but but the reason they had their issue was the heavyweight title.
Yeah, and I'm going to go on and say, but I would not call that a feud. I'd call that a match and a program, but not a feud. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, I mean that's fair, but there was a lead up to it. There was that. So to me, that's a feud. Like it's like they weren't shaking hands and hugging each other all the way up to the match.
No.
You know what I mean? So to me, that's but that's a good point. No, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
And conversely, on the other side of the coin, you can have a situation where there are two wrestlers who don't necessarily have a clear personal issue in so much as one has the personal issue, but there is the professional issue. So Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels back in '96, they weren't buddies, but they didn't dislike each other. There was a little tension, but they weren't getting into shoving fights every single chance they got. But the issue was, Bret was the champion, Shawn wanted to be the champion. But the personal issue, which I thought was really cool, is Shawn's The Boyhood Dream. That was his personal issue. Bret was in the way of that personal issue, which then made it a personal issue for Bret. You know?
It's interesting, you just named two things. That the first instance of those two coming together, Hogan Warrior and Michaels Bret Hart, I would not call a feud for the first part of their thing. I would call the match. But both of those things later had clear-cut feuds.
Became
great feuds because of that initial send-off.
Yeah,
so really,
that over time.
where a run-in or a backstage assault or a personal program is the start for a lot of the feuds on this list that we got, those started with a match of two babyfaces against each other. It ended up being fucking shenanigans.
But yeah, I think that to me is what a real feud is. It has to have a personal and a professional stake involved that the two or multiple participants can elevate and make it their own. They can chew on. But what about you, Mr. Brown?
So that's a really good thing. What makes a feud, a good feud,
for
into a great feud? For me personally, I would go in A and B. A is what you're enjoying in the middle of. It's the build up to the orgasm, right? And I think it's the promo. I think we've proven that you can have a program by two guys that aren't great workers. right? Or even good workers. But as long as the promo, either through someone cutting a straight up interview or just enough heat generated through attacks or going to someone's house and throwing them through the window, anything like that, right? That builds up that shit, and that's what you want to see, because if it was just guy fights here, then they're going to rematch again, then they're going to rematch again, and not much happens in between, then it's a series of matches.
Did anybody else get a visual in their head like I did when Noah said, the build up to the orgasm of just Noah with 2 battery clamps on his nipples, just like, fucking charge me?
No, but I do now.
Yeah, or on the testicles, because earlier in my intro, I almost made a reference to Kane shocking the nuts to Shane McMahon, which I've never been able to unsee. But to me, it's honestly, here's the one thing that I think you can put on all of our feuds that we're going to show up today is the payoff. We remember lots of things are fun while they're happening, and then afterward you're like, it's like busted nut. You're like, I don't know what I was so worked up about, right? Yeah, the whole thing. But like, it's the great lay, it's the great blow-offs that are excellent. Now, for example, I think, I'm not trying to name, I'm trying to purposely pick things that I know are not in any of our lists, right? It's very difficult. Because, spoiler alert for a few minutes, we got some good ones.
We do have some good ones.
Right?
Yep.
But, like, it's the idea that these things, here's a great example, Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle, right? Now, that match built up, starting at a Rumble, and really Act 1 ends at WrestleMania, one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time. But the match, do you remember what the last match in the feud of that program is?
Nope.
Nobody does, do you? Because the build-up was great, but you're like, well, puttering out the finish, right? But, I mean, you could, there's a lot of other stuff. I'm trying, because almost everything else I've named shows up on our list, right? But, I mean, here's a name that we very seldom mention, and we'll probably never, ever mention again, but the Triple H and Benoit feud in the Triple H Benoit Shawn Michaels storyline.
Do
right?
we have to, every time you say Benoit on the podcast, we actually have to edit it out afterwards?
No, this isn't 2008, right?
Okay.
We're podcasts all over the place. Let's talk about Chris Benoit.
I do have a mention of Chris Benoit as a part of my feud, because he did just fucking dip his toe into it briefly.
Just briefly.
Just briefly.
Just for a
just
second.
A tip.
Just
to see how it feels.
We're gonna promise to try to not make any references to that at any time. But so before my brain makes me do something I'm gonna regret and have to edit this, Jeff, what is your thing that makes a wrestling feud from good to great?
Yeah, I think there's several layers. You have to have 2 guys that you care about.
Layers.
From a fan perspective, that maybe you like one, maybe you like the other, but you have to have some sort of emotional connection there in terms of the investment. The storyline is the biggest part of it, and as you mentioned, it's not just the matches and the bookends of the feud, it's what happens in between. It's like those small morsels of storytelling that they just drop in, whether it's interference in a match or whatever. But I think the payoff is it has to deliver on the back end. Otherwise, you're building up all this time and some of them don't pan out the way they should.
I was just gonna say, man, there's an item on your list that you submitted that did not have a great payoff.
Oh no, it's terrible.
It's not
But the build up
payoff.
for it is great.
Because I have feelings about that. We gonna talk.
Well, I think too, as I'm kind of thinking more and more about this, having the wrestlers in a similar stage of their career, being hungry,
Also
important.
climbing.
Yeah.
I think having those guys being able to really push each other, but also complement each other, because they might be in a similar stage physically, similar stage in their career and age, similar stage in terms of where they're on the card, and being able to use each other to elevate the feud.
Yeah,
I agree.
100%. Well, speaking of elevation, before we get into our list, so just to give the listener a little bit of inside baseball here, we tasked each other with coming up with 2 feuds apiece.
So naturally, I have 5.
Yes. So, but undoubtedly, there's some honorable mentions. So I'd like to give the opportunity for us now to throw out some honorable mentions that we wanted to talk about. If you want to briefly talk about what...
Why are you looking at me?
Because we
know.
And I know.
You.
Everyone knows.
We know.
Talk about it. Only thing I'll ask you, gentlemen, is that if your honorable mention shows up on somebody else's too, shut the fuck up and don't talk about it.
I think that
I
works.
think it's
All right,
fair.
yeah.
All right.
I'll go real quick. I think my honorable, and it's funny how I didn't think there would be, because I had a totally different feud in my head, and then I started listening to the Mick Foley's new podcast.
Yes.
And
It is
I
good.
listened to the first 2 episodes. It's excellent.
It is.
Actually, honestly, like, just, with Conrad, usually he drives the ship with these shows.
Mick.
And it's great.
Yeah.
I feel like this is great for Conrad because it's just like a day off for this dude.
Well, Mick, too, is so fucking good as a storyteller.
Well, yeah, he's a stand-up comedian. He does a stand-up show.
I really regret that we did not go see him when he was here.
Listen, that's why I got the podcast now,
Yeah.
so I can listen to him every week from here on in. But so he had an episode about becoming mankind, which I highly recommend anybody who listens to podcasts, who likes wrestling, listen to that episode, listen to his show, and it was really interesting listening to. And I read both his books, so I already had like an idea of what it was like becoming mankind. But really listening to him talk about it was really enlightening. But anyhow, Undertaker Mankind is my runner-up. I think up until that point, I'm pretty confident, unless my memory has failed me, nobody had really humanized The Undertaker like Mankind
Nope.
did.
You're right.
Like, at all. So that I went back, because I remembered, like, I was so into that feud, and I forgot that I was into that feud, because it was so long ago. And I went back to you can watch a YouTube clip of Mankind attacking Undertaker for the first time on Monday Night Raw, right after WrestleMania.
Night after.
And and Undertaker sells like a motherfucker for him. He throws him into the steps. Undertaker flips over the steps. Undertaker doesn't do that for everybody.
Nope.
Now, especially on somebody's first night in, right? Puts the mandible claw on him, and he's like foaming at the mouth. No one does that to the dead man.
Well, how often do you have a wrestler that comes in that, A, has such a contrasting style to almost anybody, which, like, Mick does, but also has a gimmick that is almost more intense than what The Undertaker's gimmick is?
Oh,
right?
yeah. I don't think anyone predicted, though, that when he debuted as Mankind, because Cactus Jack was a crazy motherfucker.
Yes.
And Mick went full balls with Cactus Jack all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
But
The
he
hardcore
went
aspect of that was the gimmick.
Yes, even fuller balls with the promo work of Mankind.
God,
right?
so
The
good.
way he just rocked back. No one had ever seen
He's
anything
pulling
like
his
that.
hair, hitting himself in the face.
Yeah, oh, it was just... and he committed, and it got over. Imagine that.
The classical music with him coming out, like, it
Yeah.
was so...
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was so creative.
People ate that up.
And Mick Foley fully embodied that character. But anyhow, that feud, the Boiler Room Brawl, just Paul Bearer turning on The Undertaker, the unthinkable. It was just such a fun feud. And that is definitely my, like, little runner-up deal. And honestly, yeah, it's definitely the runner-up. There's nothing else that comes close in terms of intensity and, like, the impact on the characters involved. Because I think that really was a turning point for The Undertaker to be vulnerable in a way that he'd never been vulnerable before.
Good point. Jafar, do you have any runners-up you want to talk about?
Yeah, my runner-up would be Rock Austin.
Oh, God.
Nice.
Throughout the Attitude
How
Era.
dare you pick such a great feud?
Yeah, I was
And
just
that's a runner-up.
God damn it.
like absolutely shattered that it didn't show up on anyone's list.
Yeah.
Glass shattered?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glass
for,
shattered, yeah.
For the entire Attitude Era, they were going back and forth. They were flip-flopping between whether they were heel and babyface,
Right.
and they just kept flipping. But throughout it all, they just kept getting under each other's skin,
So
you
good.
know? And it was just fun to watch as a fan. And you're like, okay, what's going to happen next?
They complemented each other so well.
Crazy good.
Absolutely.
And nobody in the history of professional wrestling, before, after, or in eternity, will take a fucking stunner like The Rock will. Nobody will sell the stunner
I
like
agree.
The Rock.
He
And you know-
sells the shit out of
And
it.
you know
Yeah.
what? And this kind
Yeah.
of harkens back to what you said, Mac, about how a great feud, it can weave in and out, right? You figure Austin and Rock started feuding in the Intercontinental title days, man.
Yep.
Yep.
We're talking, that's a hot minute ago.
It
Yeah.
was 97.
Like, and it's cool to know that it's just like Rock and Triple H. They had their feud back in those days, and they separated. Did their own damn thing. Austin became a megastar, biggest star in the business. Rock kind of did his thing, and then he shut up like a lightning bolt. And now here we go again. And that made WrestleMania 15 so much more important.
Well, yeah.
Because the feud was already
No
there.
doubt,
That
yeah.
tension that was already baked in from back in. Remember when you threw my Intercontinental title over the bridge? I remember.
I remember.
Yeah.
So and then he threw Austin over the bridge.
Yeah. And it was incredible. And we never got because here, it's so interesting to think about the idea of wrestling and what happened when, and then things move so fast. But after Austin broke his neck wrestling Owen Hart, which was the next feud after the fabled Bret Hart Austin feud, right? It was The Rock and Austin. That's what they went into. So Austin in '97 went from Bret Hart to Owen Hart to The Rock. End of '97. Now it's his entire '97, and it elevated The Rock. But we didn't really get that payoff because Austin was still hurt. We got minimal amount of interaction between the two
for sure.
until Austin was the man and The Rock was about ready to knock on that door, and then history back.
And I want to real quick. I want to put out here because I think that I want to mention that the one thing that I think spoiled us as wrestling fans is that we got to witness something that will never happen again. I don't believe in my heart. Since before I was born, and since with the exception of Steve Austin and The Rock, we've never seen two red hot babyface heel combination, whatever you want to say, at the same time.
I agree.
Hitting such a social buzz coming up at the exact same time, being that red hot at the exact same time. And I argue we may never see that again in our lifetime.
Probably not.
And that's crazy to think.
Yeah.
You know, that's like the purest form of lightning in a bottle.
That was absolute lightning in a bottle. And, well, you know, we've had this conversation, too, before, where the machine right now is designed to not let that happen again.
On purpose.
So if it ever would happen, it's not going to happen in WWE. I mean, it could happen if there's ever a competing brand that is able to have two young talents that try to elevate at that point. But it just won't happen in WWE.
I mean, just to add into that, that's just in one company. Because at the exact same time, you had the NWO, you had Crow Sting, it was coming up before WCW did that all up, and then Goldberg.
Yep.
Right? So you had 4 to 5 absolute top market properties. And then right on the wings, right underneath that, was fucking D-Generation X.
Yeah.
You know, cultural phenomenon that was.
So so much happening in like 97, 98.
In that whole era.
97 was such a good year.
It was a great time to be a wrestling fan.
So good. It's still good to go watch back. So, Max, stop doing those honorable mentions. Whip it out. Roll it out.
Tommy Dreamer versus Sabu. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, I would have bought it.
Raven. Dreamer, Raven, yeah.
Jerry King Lawler and Doink the Clown.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna give the ladies a little bit of credit here. I'm gonna go Sasha Banks and Charlotte Flair.
Great feud.
I think. I mean, there was as the women's revolution happens, you have these two who are clearly ready above everybody else, and once they break through, now what do you do?
Yeah.
And it was Charlotte and Sasha. I mean, every pay-per-view, they were giving them another gimmick match. It was Hell in a Cell. It was Steel Cage. It was, Lumberjack. I mean, they gave them basically the list and said, okay, for the next 8 months, you're checking every box. First women to do this. First women to do that.
And they were putting on great matches.
They were putting on great matches. And, at that time, when it was really them, Becky wasn't quite...
She hadn't got there yet.
She hadn't got there yet. The steampunk thing wasn't... people liked it.
She was destined.
She had not become the man.
She had destined to be the Ricky Steamboat babyface intercontinental level of the women's division.
Absolutely.
Always the bridesmaid until she broke her nose and became the bride.
But
right?
it worked.
Yeah,
oh god,
honestly,
But see, then too, if Becky was there with Sasha and Charlotte, we don't get the man.
Nope.
Because she needed that. She needed that chip. But I think that's another thing about why Charlotte and Sasha were so important, because Alexa Bliss was still coming up. You had that undercard group of about 7 or 8 women that were just getting promoted from NXT, and they carried that momentum from the women's revolution to let the rest of the wrestlers kind of bring their game up to the level to where they could start getting in. Because even though you had your horsewomen, Bayley wasn't quite the performer yet. She was still too baby-faced to kind of really take control. So, and they worked great matches. They really did work great matches together. So I'm going to give Charlotte and Sasha their due.
They had a match on Raw, which I believe was Sasha's first or second time winning the belt.
It was in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, it was like a 22-minute main event on Raw.
It was a hell of a match.
It was one of the first women's matches since Trish and Lita did it years later to main event Raw. It was fucking awesome.
And the crowd was hot. The crowd was into it. They were doing an excellent job.
And it was new. It was fresh. So, who else is on your list?
So there's so many good ones.
There is.
I think the other feud that, and I think it's worth noting because because of everything they had been together, it's Undertaker and Kane.
Okay.
It's great.
Brothers of Destruction.
The Brothers of Destruction.
Man, dude, WrestleMania 14 when that happened. Oh, so cool.
But to have two guys of that size Because usually if you are a wrestler of that size, the unicorn was Taker. Nobody can move like him. Nobody could work like him at that size and be believable. And then, we get Kane. And all of a sudden, well, shit, there's another guy who can work, who's solid, who is that size, is that stature.
Can do everything but take a pedigree right.
Right. Yeah. So
It's true.
And then Macho Man and everybody else.
Yeah.
Well, anybody. Macho and anybody.
Macho Man.
Macho Man and Peter Parker, Bonesaw,
Yeah.
right, and Spider-Man.
I got you for 3 minutes.
You're going nowhere.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on that because I have 3 for the honorable mention. I bothered to write them down because my list was originally 5, and I was like, nah, and then we went 2. I'm like, shit. Well, these three are staying. Macho Man and Jake the Snake Roberts.
Okay.
Because of all the feuds in my life that have ever visually stuck with me from being a kid. Jake put that fucking cobra on the arm of Macho Man Randy
biting down on
Savage.
his arm.
And then when they had to exit out on there, that stuck with me all my life. I remember getting teary-eyed.
I was
hiding
upset,
behind the
yeah.
couch,
He
still
might
watching.
die.
That came up in that John Oliver clip that I sent you guys the other day, just about that too. Is just watching the cobra just bite on Macho Man's arm.
Oh, it's incredible, and that whole feud it's such a great feud because it starts with Jake Roberts. He's doing his trust me thing where he had turned on Ultimate Warrior and set him up to just basically get suffocated to death by the Undertaker. And I love that feud because it was a slower version of his music, and it just works trust me echoing throughout the arena when you obviously couldn't trust this guy. And then he bites Savage, and Savage did the old DDP thing. Spoiler for later, and had the arm wrapped around, and he sold that. And then we took that all the way to the Royal Rumble 92, which we covered in the archives, where Savage is so furious that he eliminates himself from the Rumble just to get his hands on Jake the Snake Roberts. It was fucking awesome. So that is there. Again, as far as if you name top 5 Saturday morning superstars moments in your life, that's 1 or 2, just because I remember it. 2 is a weird one, and I apologize, but it's very cool. It's the Hiroshi Tanahashi and Shinsuke Nakamura feud from New Japan. Starting in 2007, where I hopped in on it, was the whole reason I started watching New Japan was in 2010, because someone's that I was a member with on message boards watch this. And these are 2 guys that I obviously not a lick of English and anywhere in the build-up, anywhere, but you understood the promo, you understood the video package, as these were the 2 young lions that started, and they were both babyface champions, both had the distinction of beating Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle to win their first IWGP championships, and who was better? Tanahashi was like the Cena to Nakamura's Orton, and then Nakamura fucking went into the weird ass dark side slothy Nakamura that we got now.
Okay.
And they could have been yelling in Portuguese. It didn't matter. You would have understood it in any language. 2 guys beating the shit out of each other, and it was every month on New Japan for a solid year. These guys tore it down. And to the point where it's New Japan, so no one won with their finish ever, but you didn't care, and so it was the whole reason that
Noah finished.
Yeah, many times. Oh, I love Japanese men yelling. It's still to this day I would make that my ringtone. I'm not going to do anything because that just sounds culturally.
Yeah, I was never into New Japan wrestling.
Oh, you owe it to yourself.
I've never even dipped my toes in it. I never had any interest.
Because when I think of it,
Noah whips out his wrestling dick to bring up a feud in 2007 New Japan.
That's where it started. I didn't watch it till 2010, though. So, being honest with you for a minute. But I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. Because what I thought of for New Japan previously in Japanese wrestling was Misaharu Misawa or, Kenta Kobashi.
Yeah.
In that 1992, Meltzer jacking off, giving it 8 stars for guys just chopping each other. Throw it a German suplex that looks like it would break any normal person's neck for 25 minutes. Vader losing an eye. That's what I thought of, right? But here it was, which is that style, that 2010 New Japan style, is basically perfecting the Ring of Honor style, which then at that point would then get molded into the modern AEW style and this very Seth Rollins, strong style Moxley kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So highly recommend. It's the one thing we'll probably mention that no one will have an idea. Just put Nakamura, Tanahashi, 2010 into your Google machine, your YouTube, and enjoy. I promise you, it's worth it. But number 3 is another thing that took all of my heart not to put on the list, and I'm surprised no one did, and it's Ric Flair and Sting. Ric Flair and Sting.
Oh boy!
It's
when Flair made him.
Yeah, Flair made him, and a lot of our stuff is about who made who.
It really is.
We brought up Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes isn't Dusty Rhodes without Harley Race.
Right.
Ric Flair isn't Ric Flair without Dusty Rhodes. Sting isn't Sting without Ric Flair. It's like that fucking chain. But they, from 1990 Great American Bash in Baltimore all the way to the very last Nitro, those motherfuckers had a thing. And dumb as fuck Sting still kept trusting Ric Flair, and he kept fucking.
He ain't the brightest.
No, but Flair was so good in that time that you wanted him to do well, and then you're like, but no, I really want to see him punch Sting in the face. Spoiler alert: it was always coming.
Yeah.
And Arn Anderson was not far behind just to stomp Sting. Arn Anderson got out of bed that day just to stomp the shit out of Sting every day.
You know,
it is the quintessential WCW feud, in my opinion.
Now, I didn't watch a ton of WCW back in the day when that was live happening. Now, as I'm older, I've gone back, thank God for the internet. You can go back and watch old stuff. WWE Network, you can go back and watch old stuff. And, like, and it's funny, I don't know who was talking about Sting earlier, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, Sting's been around for a long time.
A long fucking hot minute.
Yeah.
Like, Sting, I think, debuted in, like, his professional wrestling debut, I think was, like 87?
87.
Isn't it kind of crazy that we're at a stage right now in our lives where there are a lot of entities that have been around for 5 decades?
Yep.
We're driving home today, and Seth and I are listening to the radio, and fucking Red Hot Chili Peppers are going on with a new fucking single, and I'm like, these motherfuckers have been doing it since the 80s.
Yep.
And it's like it's
That's
like
5
32 years, 33 years, but it's 5 decades that this shit spans.
Wow.
And we got that with wrestling now too, because not to bring the vibe down at all or anything, but a lot of guys didn't quite make it into their 40s or 50s as wrestlers.
Yeah. No.
And
Yeah.
we're seeing guys that were able to avoid some of those pitfalls that are still relevant in their 50s. Not really saying relevant, but still show up. We'll still do a show, still do an appearance, but you can still kind of see some of that stuff.
Yeah.
But
AJ Styles is like 45.
the dude
44,
looks like he's
something
20.
that.
AJ Styles is of the age now, a year or two older than Flair was in the 90s when they started calling Flair old.
Yeah.
You
Things
know-
have changed.
Yeah,
I just remember watching like fucking Jack LaLanne like juice commercials on fucking like 2:00
Yes,
in the morning
yeah.
after WCW had the second replay.
The second replay, yeah.
Right,
TNT.
Exactly. And then like you just shut it off and it's like it's the juice, and like you see this gray-haired like 65, 70-year-old man who's fucking chiseled.
Jacked, yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna be AJ Styles and Randy Orton,
Probably.
and like because they're gonna keep fucking wrestling until like they have to drag him out of the ring.
Well, I mean, just be told, Randy Orton getting the diamond cutter and eventually getting to the point where his style never really led itself to doing much anyway, but to the point where all he has to do is just be limber enough that once every 6 months or a year, he just hits an RKO out of nowhere, and he's doing it now. Most
Out
of
of
the guys
nowhere.
bump for him. He just catches them and falls. He could do it until he's 75, 80 years old.
And the crowd fucking eats that shit up
Loves
every
it.
time.
Loves
Well,
it.
Why wouldn't you? Because somehow you perfected the diamond cutter even more to make it a
Right.
fucking meme.
When he fucking wrestled Seth, and Seth went for the curb stop at Mania, and he just fucking jumped up and
Oh yeah,
Caught him.
and he was so
Caught him
proud of
with the
himself
RKO.
that he
Oh my
forgot
God.
to cover him because everyone was just
Yeah.
he's like, "Fuck yeah!" Oh shit! That was awesome. It's awesome, definitely. And I think when we inevitably start getting deeper, because we popped our cherry on the Undertaker, but there are guys to do standalone episodes.
Oh,
on.
absolutely.
We talked about doing a Hogan one for better or worse. We got to do Cena. We got to do Orton, Flair.
Gilbert.
We could do Gilbert. I thought about. I'm gonna go. Honestly, I almost got you a cameo from Gilbert. Because I thought, oh my god, if I could just get Gilbert to talk about his dick and send it to Mac, that
Wait.
would make amazing things.
Wait. Is Gilbert talking about my dick, or is Gilbert talking about his own dick?
Talking about his own dick
Okay.
to you.
All right.
But
right.
he was way too expensive, and I'm like,
Really?
Come on, Gilbert.
Gilbert.
Yeah. There's several former WWE and WCW like Intercontinental United States champions, which are way cheaper than Gilbert. Which I'm not gonna say who they are because I may get those guys to talk about their dick
There you
at
go.
another time.
Okay. So wait, now do you have any more on your list?
No,
Was
that
that
was just
it?
those three. I basically just read off my 5. And I'm just so surprised no one put Flair and Sting, but it makes sense.
Let's
One
let him
last
watch
thing
it.
I wanted to say about that. That feud was so fucking personal and so intense early in the stages that RoboCop had to get involved. All I'm gonna say, which we will fucking do that show. RoboCop in WCW, Capital Carnage, 1991. A show that's also synonymous for promoting a main event, and which is an 8-man tag that only 2 guys ended up being on the show. Still, we got RoboCop though.
It was very WCW of
Very
work.
Is
Is this Halloween Havoc part 4.
It could be.
When we get into this, we get into the
God, I
RoboCop.
can't
We talk
wait.
about that pay-per-view for 75 days before we actually
God
talk about the
damn.
monster trucks at the end.
I'm just going to go ahead and spoil something for everybody. We're going to be doing Halloween Havocs until this show stops.
So many of them.
We started
And none of
at
them are good.
95, which means we have Halloween Havocs before and many after to do every October until you people file a restraining order against us.
Yeah.
No
You
more
tell us
Halloween
to stop.
Havocs.
All right, so let's get to the bread and
Yeah,
butter.
let's get into
Meat
it.
and potatoes.
Yeah.
The sex organs of this episode.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Let's
Yeah.
do that. Who wants to start?
I'll go.
All right.
Mac will go. All
Now,
right.
so let's talk about how we want to do this here. Now, am I going to say a feud, and then Jeff's going to do one, then her? Are we going to go round
go
table
round table.
one each?
Let's go round
All right.
table. Number 2 and then number
I'm
1.
going to go ahead and start with my number 2.
Perfect.
Which was my number 3, but my number 1 is also Jeff's number 1, and I didn't want to go ahead and do the same thing and have talk because we'll talk about the feuds anyway.
You can just
so
reinforce it when
I
it gets
switched
to
it
his-
around. So
steal his thunder.
That's kind of when you said, "Do you have any other honorable mentions, Mac?" And my brain just fucking froze because it's like I did 4, I didn't do more because I always get shit when I do more than what's supposed to be allowed.
Yes.
And this
You do.
time I decided not to do it. Then you fucking called me out, and I'm like, God damn it, who can I fucking say?
Quick. Mae Young in the hand. China and Mark Henry.
I was actually just gonna fucking say China and Mark Henry when you said that. No, the other honorable mention I should have said was fucking Rock Triple H because
Oh,
it's
God, yeah.
one of my favorite Intercontinental matches of all time was watching
that's
those
so
guys.
much
Talk about if you didn't have a fucking payoff, and that bothers me to this day.
Well,
no real payoff.
It did, but it did.
But it didn't.
When your payoff's a backlash, it doesn't count.
No, the payoff. It's because they didn't want to fucking pay off. Like Rock decided to become a movie star.
Yeah, like,
and
I mean, like they didn't.
Triple H decided to own fucking WWE.
They never got
so it
like
just
one more
got-
go around to like really
They teased
cement
it
the
too many
legacy.
times.
They did.
Really, you think the most? If they'll probably retcon it that their big payoff was the Iron Man match. That was the debut of the American Badass Undertaker.
That match was
correct?
not great.
No, it was not good at all. When you have the two of the top stars in wrestling in an Iron Man match, and you are upstaged by Shawn Michaels in short shorts and Undertaker coming out like a homeless guy, then it wasn't a great match.
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed.
But Mac, hit me with your number 2.
So my number 2 is going to be one that really carried wrestling for an interesting period of time. I'm going to go Cena Orton. You know, when Jones, we're just moved in together, right? And we got Monday Night Raw Mondays. We didn't really ever pay attention to SmackDown, but we always
No.
made sure to sit down for Raw.
Raw has a vibe.
Yeah. And just, it was a weird time in wrestling. You know, the 2006, 2007 to 2010, 2011, because of just what was or was not going on at that time.
Thanks for shifting, man.
It was a shift, you know, because now you had nobody pushing really WWE. TNA was not really pushing WWE. Ring of Honor was essentially a feeding system for WWE. They had bought everybody. So you kind of had this period of time from 2000, 2001 to 2004, 2005, where you're going from Attitude Era into Ruthless Aggression. You got some new guys coming in. The cards are getting shuffled. Your huge named wrestlers from the 90s and the early 2000s aren't there anymore. So what do you have? You have John Cena, Ultimate Babyface, and you have Randy Orton. And those two guys, for almost 3 or 4 years, carried the main event card of WWE.
Longer than that.
Oh,
Yeah, think about it.
Well, no, for sure. But I mean, in terms of even just against each other.
Yeah.
Because they kept facing off against each other. And, you know, you had Shawn Michaels was in and out. You know, Triple H was in and out. Kurt Angle's gone. Jericho's in and out. You know, there's a lot of guys that, you know, were named wrestlers at that point in time that just weren't there. And Cena was huge. Orton, huge. They're both Hall of Famers, surefire. You know, and those two guys, I think they kind of carried it until WWE could figure out what the next step was.
Yeah, I mean, you know, those guys, they were workhorses. You know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they were consistent in their deliverable, like, night in and night out.
Yeah.
So Vince knew he could rely on those two guys to carry it because what else did you have?
Right.
Yeah, they're a part of I think it was might have been 2002 or 2003. I think it was they're part of the 2002 OVW graduating class.
Yeah.
With Shelton Benjamin, Brock Lesnar, and Batista. And I know I'm missing a couple other people, but you want to talk about a more impactful graduating class
Yeah.
than that?
sure.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
No.
Like
No,
that's
that's-
pure
Well,
money
if you
and
just
talent
say
right there.
Brock Lesnar or John Cena,
It's worth it.
it's worth it. When you say them both at the same time, then that's insanity.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last 2 decades of wrestling that we've had. Is really those two.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I mean, so I was trying to find it on Reddit. One of the things that it was to show how iconic this feud is. First of all, the Cena Orton rivalry has its own Wikipedia page.
it does
course
have
it
its own
does,
Wikipedia
yeah.
page.
course it does.
They wrestled just on TV alone. They've wrestled 32 times in single matches. That does not count tag matches where they
Right.
are partners against. That does not count Royal Rumbles, multi-matches. Just one-on-one on TV or pay-per-view 32 times.
What was the match that they had on Monday Night Raw? You guys can probably know where I'm going with this. It was Cena and Orton
Against the entire Raw
against the
roster.
entire Raw roster.
Oh,
you guys
yes.
remember that?
I
Yes.
remember where we were when we watched
Yeah.
that. We were at the Bedrock Cafe in Beachview,
Yeah.
eating basement wings.
Yeah.
The old days.
Taking over this one. Now, sometimes I get on people for making way too specific a reference, but I'm going to say it just once. There was this little bar in the middle of a shitty suburb of Pittsburgh.
Why do I hear my voice coming out of your mouth as you're saying
Yep,
this?
right. And there was like this little, and it was like the shadiest bar. Many people have been stabbed there before and since, probably. But we showed up and they had like unbelievable wing special. So we just
Yes.
took over this one
They
small
paid
room.
you 10 cents per wing.
Yeah,
That's
you
the
know,
special it was.
and it was actually pretty
They were
decent
good wings.
And you get a pitcher of beer for like $5.
Yes.
And we'd go, and they didn't care for the business. They liked the business on Monday, so we took over a small section of this bar, and it was turned on Monday Night Raw. And we just walk. We didn't even sit down. We just walk around with a chicken wing in one hand
And
and
a
a beer
beer.
in the other hand,
Yep.
and watch Monday Night Raw and be
awesome.
obnoxious.
You had just turned 21.
I did. It was fun. And Orton and Cena fought the entire Raw roster
That was-
for
yes.
a main event one night, which was just incredible to see Randy Orton and John Cena wrestle Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Goldust, Trevor Murdoch, and I don't know, countless other human beings for a random reason. But yes, that was and that's when they were like feuding for the first or second time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But we were lucky enough to see, I think live, I've seen Orton versus Cena twice. The first of which was that Breaking Point pay-per-view, in which
Yeah.
We tried to
WWE,
blow him up.
yeah, where they had,
We were there.
yeah,
Yes.
that was their
Yeah,
Iron Man
we were
match.
there.
We were there, and they tried to kill him. And
I'll never
try to kill
forget.
him.
I'll never forget sitting in the arena for that. And we had really good seats for this.
We
We
did,
were right
yes.
in the middle of the ring. We were still in like the
like
first
B section,
B section
yeah.
and everything. And like the realization that Randy Orton could set off the pyrotechnics. Like when he realized where the button
It
was.
was great.
He's like, I'm going to go fucking grab John Cena and put him over top of this. And I'm going to blow his ass up.
Like, where the fuck was his brain at this point?
and we got to the point where like he couldn't blow him up. So we're like, Randy Orton's going to go in the fucking back and just come back out with a fucking shotgun.
Shotgun just
He's
shoot him.
gonna
Be done with the damn feud.
Just fucking.
This
Yeah.
is it was incredible to watch live because they really that match was way better than we ever expected it to be because
Yes.
they told a hell of a story. And what else could they do? They had fought so many times. Spoiler alert: they would fight many more times after that. But it was the first time that I remember the wrestling aspect of Cena starting to come out more than it had because Cena hit an RKO in the match and started doing other moves other than the 5 moves of doom, and that was like Cena is run out of his 5 moves. What's he going to do to beat Orton? Oh, he'll use Orton's 5 moves.
Yes,
Right?
See, they were also very similar because Cena had the 5 moves of doom. When you put John Cena in the ring with a really good wrestler, you always saw that Cena's wrestling was elevated. There were a lot more moves that he felt comfortable doing. But Orton was kind of built in the same way. You had, obviously the RKO. You had where he had the DDT off the ropes.
Yep.
You had the fucking stomping of the limbs, which I loved when he
Yeah,
would
it's
do
the
that.
Garvin stomp.
Yeah,
for
the
sure.
stomp stuff was awesome. But he always had his kind of hallmarks that he did in a match also.
Well, I mean, think about the style that they were trained in. They both guys cut their teeth on the independents, but got polished. Not only, in OVW, but on the road as a young guy just after the brand split. So that's a good.
It's a great
Good.
feud.
And
Great
and
20-year-long feud.
Well, and a lot of time, because Randy Orton they were doing that kind of celebration of Randy Orton's time in WWE, and they're going to be doing it for John Cena coming up here soon too. But I remember watching an interview where he was talking about, they asked Randy Orton about his favorite feuds, and he still says that the number one person he's ever worked with, and he really attributes so much success of his career, is John Cena. He's like, I don't think I'm anywhere I would be without having that time in the ring with him.
Yeah, Lex Luthor to Superman.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'll go next since we're going around in this kind of a circle to go with my number 2. From a different era, my number 2 all-time feud is Bret the Hitman Hart against Owen the King of Hearts Hart. I distinctly remember it's not a long feud, certainly not as long as Cena and Orton and some of the other stuff we had talked about earlier.
God, as you said that, I just realized that the entire fucking wrestling show on Stars is really about the Hart family.
Yep.
I didn't even fucking put those things together until you just said that.
That's the heels, right?
Heels, because they're the Spades.
Yeah, there you go. Of course, motherfuckers. Come on.
It's a great fucking...
I'm sure it does.
You guys haven't had a chance to watch it yet, and
watched
I've said this to each of you. We're going to have a fucking day where I just have you come over, and we binge the first season, which is like 6 episodes. The show is so fucking good.
I hear good things.
It really is.
I do listen to DDP and Jake Roberts' podcast, and they talk about that show a lot, and I think it's mostly because Paige wants to be on the show, so he keeps bringing it up.
Well, because there've been at least 2 or 3 legit professional wrestlers, Hall of Famers that they've had just kind of do a couple little cameos in the show. But it's phenomenal.
It's wrestling oriented. I will watch it.
Yeah.
I went and saw Nacho Libre in the theater, so I've never been to talk and turn my nose up about anything.
See,
but Bret Hart and Owen Hart, it was such an amazing story because you didn't expect it at the time. Because Bret Hart, and I think this is a theme for all of his career, is that he is unreasonably talented. The best to ever do it, in my opinion, between the ropes, right? And for every time Bret has ever been in the position to unbelievably get that shit going and earn his stripes, something fucking happens that they pull the goddamn rug out from underneath him. When he finally beats Yokozuna, or I mean it's before that, when he finally gets the champion, he beats Ric Flair, beats Razor, they pull it out from under him, give it to Yokozuna and Hulk Hogan in the same night, right?
Right.
Then he finally beats Yokozuna, but at the same time, we're doing this undercard feud with Owen, which really made his win for Yoko kind of second nature because the money was the feud with Owen with the turn, and the idea that the feud starts not with promos and seeing Owen wrestle really by himself for a while. It was that he was an afterthought in the Bret versus Jerry Lawler feud, which then, because Jerry Lawler and 16-year-old girls are just this reoccurring theme throughout his career, no apologies to Jerry Lawler, he got pulled off.
That is a conversation for another time.
That is. Got pulled off of Survivor Series, so they had Shawn Michaels lead a team of random-ass people, and the only person that gets eliminated from that match is Owen Hart. So when everyone's celebrating at the end, Owen's all upset about it. Squashes it, because that's what brothers do. And then, infamously, when they lose the tag titles to the fucking Rougeau brothers...
Was it Royal Rumble?
Royal Rumble.
That's right.
Owen Hart kicked Bret Hart's leg out of from under his damn leg. Yeah, because he was just so flustered. Because Owen, admittedly, not a strong promo. Never was. That's not why you had him do it. He could tell the story in the ring. But that's what started it, and it built it up to they would repeat that concept later. One is the heel and wants to fight, and then the brother that's the babyface doesn't want to do it, and the heel pushes the button. And you get your parents involved. Either they're alive and old like the Hart parents were, or they're dead and burnt to a crisp like the Undertaker and Kane. Finally, the babyface relents, and there we are at WrestleMania for a fucking classic match. Mm-hmm. But what I love about it was that they had all of the opportunity. Owen wins, first of all, which nobody, especially 9-year-old Noah, didn't see coming. Bret losing in the opening match of WrestleMania when he'd win the belt later that night. But they had every opportunity to have Bret go out and beat another guy with an occupational gimmick every night on Monday Night Raw, but they didn't. They stuck. They gave Owen the King of the Ring, which set him up as the number one contender to one of my favorite steel cage matches ever. SummerSlam.
It's probably one of the best steel cage matches
ever.
Easily.
Oh, it's so good with the big blue steel cage that does not give a fuck about your feelings.
That superplex off.
No.
God, do you see that clip? And you know they felt every bit of that impact.
With that hard concrete ring on that big blue steel cage, and they fucking tear it down at SummerSlam. And here's the thing: they don't touch really anymore after that for the rest of their career. But it had done enough for Bret and enough for Owen, where Owen ran as a heel for the remainder of his career, except for the tiny little bit when Triple H was more over than he was, so he's babyface by default.
Right.
But you remembered it, and you remember, that's the motherfucker who kicked Bret Hart's leg out, and he was always the whiny Hart. And it made, when they came together in the Hart Foundation in '97, that much better. Because you had gone full circle. They hug, and Owen's crying because they've been on the thing, and there's Bret not crying.
Not
looking
at all.
dead at the fucking
I
camera.
love that
'cause
shot.
He's a heel
So
now.
good.
And that's how the
Business.
story ends. And it's like, so they start as Bret as the sympathetic babyface and Owen is the piece of shit. And it ends where you feel bad for Owen and you love, and you're just infuriated with Bret Hart.
Like motherfucking Bret.
I could
That son
fucking
of a
watch,
bitch.
and if it just has the word Hart in it, chances are I'll watch it anyway. But if it's those two, oh yeah.
Yeah. So what I loved about that steel cage match is, most cage matches or Hell in a Cell matches, they're overly violent just for the sake of being violent.
Yeah.
This one was not. It was super technical. Most of it was them trying to escape the cage and getting dragged back in. Bret Hart in his book talked about that suplex off the top.
Needing to protect him.
And he just wanted to protect because he knew it was way farther than Owen had dropped before. And like, how can we take this bump without either of us getting hurt? And that sharpshooter reversing to another sharpshooter is like one of the most magnificent reversals ever. And it was
so
just
brilliant.
like the payoff, because like you want to see it, but at the same time you're like, they're brothers. Like,
Right.
I don't want them to kill each other, but I want the Hitman to win.
You want Bret
You
to
do.
win. I
Yeah.
mean,
It was so well done.
So, and in true fashion to what I just said about Bret Hart, that still wasn't the main event of the goddamn show.
Yeah.
The Undertaker versus the Underfaker was the match that closed
Wow.
the goddamn show.
Yeah.
Because Bret is the champion in a actual blow-off match and a second biggest pay-per-view of the year in
Yeah.
a gimmick match against the person he wants to wrestle most in the world, and guess who's not going on last? Fucking Vince taking a shot at Bret Hart.
I can tell you with complete certainty, there's like a short list of like WrestleMania matches I've watched more than 10 to 15 times. WrestleMania 10, that opening match, Bret and Owen, I wouldn't say I'd study it, but I would just watch it so intently because it's like watching two masters at work. The
was
match
perfect.
was so good, beginning to end.
psychology in that
Like
match.
just the shove and the slap across the face.
And it's good. The only thing wrong with that whole match, there's only one thing wrong with that entire match, and it's that fucking white glob of shit Owen has
yeah,
on the
everybody
side of his
notices
mouth.
it.
Yeah.
At the end
We
of
all
the
know
time.
what it
But
looks
when he
like,
wears it,
yeah.
he's got his arms up, you're just like, God,
Just
dude.
wipe your face,
Fucking
please. Just wipe it.
go
I
like
thought the
this
ref would
or
have like
spit
said
out.
something
Then
when
he-
there was a
Then no
whole
one
thing.
told him when he
Yeah.
cut a promo.
I was
after
saying,
the
he
match.
cut a promo with it on his face.
He's like,
Let's take care of
Bret,
that.
I beat you. I did it. And you're like, no, Owen, fucking, you got toothpaste on your, do something, dude.
we don't know what it is.
I-
We don't want to know what it
Yeah.
is.
I want you guys to
Take
know
care
that
of
I
it.
have a legit fear of that in my life, like a real legit, like in the, like in my bones, of having something on my mouth and nobody telling me it's there, and like going through the day.
That would be terrible.
I wipe, like if I'm at lunch and everything, I wipe my mouth like 7 more times than I probably have to because I'm just paranoid that there's a little glob of fucking mustard from my ham sandwich
Something right there.
that's just kind of sitting there and nobody wants to tell me about it because of fucking Owen Hart.
Yeah. That makes
Because
sense.
of Owen Hart.
Because of Owen.
I-
His legacy lives on.
I will definitely say that was a solid choice for a number 2, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
And so we're going. My
You
Yep.
up next.
You're up.
So
Do it, Doc.
So we'll get right into it. Diamond Dallas Page and Randy Savage, which was one feud of the year, if I recall
97.
correctly.
Yeah. Year. In the same year that Hart and Austin happened.
Yeah. Well,
and Survivor Series 97 happened.
And I'm just gonna put this shit right there. Listen, my favorite feud of all time is Bret Hart and Steve Austin. That is my favorite. It is, but we're not talking about it today.
We cannot.
Because
can't.
we're not talking about it today.
There's an entire episode.
I must
entire
go
series
default to
covered.
Yeah.
there's A1, there's A2, then there's there's Steve Austin, DDP and Savage. It was personal. It wasn't very professional. It started professional initially because the professional aspect of it is WCW versus NWO, right?
Yep.
DDP had been approached by the NWO to join up, and he kind of diamond cutted, I think, Scott Hall and threw Kevin
He
Nash
did.
out
It
of the
was
ring.
beautiful.
Which, for the record, no one was doing that to the NWO at that point.
No, yeah.
Didn't they have like a light blue NWO T-shirt? Wasn't there like a shirt floating around like at that time about
Light
what it
blue?
would? Because
That was
DD,
You think about BWO?
no, because like Diamond Dallas Page his
There-
colors were like the light blue.
There
So
was
if
a
he
lot of
joined them
concept stuff, like
because I know I
it's
saw it
hard
floating around.
It's hard to know what was legit or not. It did show up around the time, like the black and green cane from DX,
Right.
which has been reportedly debunked, but more pictures keep showing up of it. Right, so a lot of prototypes.
Now, I don't
Yeah.
recall that, but I remember like the contrast white and black T-shirts
Yeah.
they had. But so DDP, and let's just establish, we talked about, I think we covered DDP in It wasn't Halloween Havoc. It was Bash and Bash at the Beach.
Yep. Which
All
is still my favorite title we've ever done for a fucking episode.
So,
ever.
like, DDP had gone through gimmick hell. You know, cigars and Roman candles,
No,
basically.
we talked about it at Halloween
Was
Havoc.
it Halloween Havoc?
Because he opens the show with every gimmick that has
Yeah.
ever been exampled in the entire history
We're
of the
talking
world.
about a guy who, at his age, was getting into wrestling, like, full-time at a very old age, relative to everybody else. And he was able to transcend that position that he was in. You know, because it's professional, because it's WCW versus NWO. Savage attacks him, the NWO attack him. Now it becomes, there's a spread of your wife from Playboy from a few years ago. I'm going to put it up on the uncensored pay-per-view, right? That becomes, I remember going, oh shit, I didn't know that. That's a Nitro girl. Kimberly, she's nude?
Yeah.
Oh
The
shit.
internet wasn't really a
Yo.
thing. Yeah, there was no
Whoa.
internet.
Okay, like, say more.
I'll never forget them coming out like and even Hogan was like they had it spread out.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh,
Yeah, they
about
put
that.
it out on pay-per-view. Like, they showed it. I think they spray painted it maybe a little bit.
Think about that. Unless you had access to Playboy, like you had it, or you know, like somebody in your family or close friend that had it, you couldn't see like famous boobs.
No.
Like now on the internet, you type in anybody's name and then naked or boobs. There's like 50 images now. 35.
No, we
of them are
recommend doing
fake.
this in your incognito browser for the sake of all things.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah.
Save
The event that you have your Google accounts linked to like your personal browsers and stuff.
No,
Don't do it at work.
You would
No,
think it
don't
would
do it at work.
You think it would
On your phone,
stay
maybe.
that
But-
personal then. No, it gets even more personal because now they assault Kimberly. They spray paint
spray
her.
paint her back.
Like, listen, you don't touch another man's wife. You don't do it.
No.
And now it's beyond just personal. Now DDP wants to kill Savage.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And he was the perfect guy to do that because the NWO was super hot at that time.
Very.
Right? And this is, and I just want to piggyback on this by saying this is my favorite feud on our list to hear people talk about, like, shoot stuff on. Whether it be DDP or Nash or when Hall was with us or Bischoff. Everyone talks about this because it's so fascinating to me that here's a guy that never should have made it.
Nope.
And
Yeah.
and they insert him in the middle of one of the hottest feuds, and the one guy who wasn't really doing much in that thing was Randy Savage, and it just clicked. It clicked as two guys, and it was the last great feud of Savage's career.
Yes.
And the first great feud
No,
of DDP.
it put him over big time.
It made him. It made him, and it kept Savage relevant until Savage was on the way
Couldn't
out
do
back
it
to
anymore.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anymore.
Savage, I mean, now Randy Savage, for my money, is easily, you know, count on one hand list amount of guys who were the greats.
Yeah.
Everything that he did had some meaning to it. But in 1997, Randy Savage had joined the NWO, and he was kind of like you said, floating. He was there, but he wasn't doing a whole lot.
He was there, first of all, because he's Randy Savage. Second of all, they want that Slim Jim money.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah.
Where Randy Savage goes, Slim Jim went.
Right.
And 3, he was too big not to have, and it had just enough show. Like, why would I? Everyone knew
Yeah.
what they were doing to
Give him something
WCW
relevant
guys.
to do.
Yeah.
Like they were making every WCW guy look like a piece of shit except for Sting, and you could only have one Sting. So what are you gonna do? Well, fucking turn him heel. He's already wearing black and white anyway. Give him a even more ridiculous cowboy hat and send him fucking out there. That's all you got to do.
Now, the two of them only wrestled a few times. It's not like they had like a feud that lasted 2.5 years. I think they might have wrestled one-on-one matches 3 or 4 times maximum. I think their blow-off was at the Halloween Havoc, I'm pretty sure, that year. But their first match, which was Spring Stampede, 97, was their first match, and that's the match that Savage put him over. And he had no business doing it.
No-
had no reason to
no
do
need
it.
to.
He not only put him over, he put him over like $1 million. He took his finish like a champ.
And
Yeah.
stay
Right.
down for it. That's
And-
what watch that back. Like if any other person in any other era, he drops him with it and waits that long, they kick out.
Yep.
But he didn't.
I mean, at that point, I remember I was already on the DDP train before this because I was like, dude, the Diamond Cutter was getting over. Like, I don't know if I'd ever seen a finish get over so organically like that since.
Nope.
Yeah.
Like, at all. I remember
Well,
I was
Maybe
just
the RKO.
Yeah.
the Diamond Cutter, right?
Yeah.
So,
No, it's the RKO. The Diamond
Sure.
Cutter starts with this.
oh,
You know, dear sweet listener, I just kind of did
Like
the diamond
this.
shape. You know, the RKO does not.
well,
Wait a minute. Can we just also acknowledge the fact that DDP sued Jay-Z over that hand signal?
I did not know
I
that.
didn't know that.
He did. Guess who won?
Jay-Z.
Yeah.
You like, that's hilarious. Well, I remember like being in school and like and Gib, our midnight listener, will attest to this. We would like run up past each other, just give each other a Diamond Cutter out of nowhere because that was the gimmick. One mistake, that's all it takes. Bang! Diamond Cutter. So it was
fucking
so
love
over
it.
with us. We're punk kids from Pittsburgh. It was over all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like and I'm not gonna like repeat the whole story, but you can look it up on YouTube. Like DDP talking about the night that Savage put him over, and Savage is tying his shoes, and they're like, what are we gonna do
Arn
tonight?
Anderson's the one to ask him.
And he's like, I think I'm gonna take the cutter tonight. And DDP looks at him like, huh.
And Arn Anderson's like, you know
me?
what he just
What?
said? Yeah. Which is like that old school wrestler's like, he's going to make you. And DDP's like, fuck yeah. And it was work because DDP and Randy Savage are two guys that are well known for being dudes that like to go over everything in an era where nobody went over anything.
Yeah.
They're like, let's go out in the ring, brother. I don't know. We'll fill it out there. We'll see what DDP would come to people and it would frustrate them with books and pages of what he saw the match as. And Savage loved to talk about it because he didn't trust anybody. They each had, DDP was unsure and inconfident, and Savage didn't trust anybody. But what it meant is they were both on the same motherfucking page for every step of that way.
And the aftermath of this feud is the taped ribs that everybody remembers.
To this day, he still has tape ribs.
He's selling the shit out of that still.
the crutches across the ribs, the beat downs, and I can't remember the name of the pay-per-view after that where they had like the false count anywhere match, or was that Halloween Havoc actually?
Yeah, that was the blow off. Was the Halloween
and
Havoc.
just up until that point, I'd never seen Savage so violent.
No, he was everything you wanted him to be from being the Macho King, but that he couldn't be because Vince McMahon didn't want him to terrify people. They didn't want him to pay, and this is very true for a lot of those heels. That's why they cut the balls out of Papa Shango when it was starting to actually get over, was they wanted people to pay enough to hate you, to see you get your ass kicked, but not to be so terrified that they wouldn't pay to be in the same room with you. Which is why they stopped, like when Warrior started having the spasms and throwing up.
remember that.
And that was sick shit, and it got over real well to where little kids were crying in the crowd, and then he's like, no, we can't have you do this. We're going to have you're going to drop the smoke, you're going to drop the voodoo hat, you're just going to run in, maybe you shake a little bit.
May shake a little bit.
Shake a little bit, and cut the balls
So then
right
how
out.
does the Fiend happen?
Well, because Vince learns that money talks, and years have changed. Look at the Boogeyman. You think he would ever let someone eat live worms
God.
every week on TV?
Good protein.
I don't miss that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You know what, though? I gotta respect the Boogeyman just because I like anyone who's like, listen, I'm gonna give you something shitty to do and get it over. And they're like, all right. And even though it's fucking awful, and no one should ever have to do it, and I would rather get my hair cut by Brutus the Barber Beefcake for $20 than get paid $200 to eat worms after getting squashed by the Boogeyman.
Yeah.
The dude made it fucking work, dude.
He did.
He did.
Do you guys know that I got a tomato plant? It's a beefsteak tomato plant, and I've named it Brutus.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
I bet you that thing will actually get over. Actually, you know what? If that thing,
Brutus
if
the
that
Barber
thing,
Beefsteak.
yeah, if that thing gets
Nice.
over, all of a sudden you can't find it, and it's there just trying to leech off the Hulk Hogan. Then you know what's going on.
What's great is nobody in my family knows why I named it Brutus, but you do.
That's the best.
Perfect.
Now the internet
you go.
world does too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's my number two. And it's just
Beautiful
a
fight.
really important match, a really important feud because it made one of the biggest stars in wrestling.
You know what we're gonna do?
Yeah, I
We
agree.
shared some clips with each other about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say right now, and Jeff, since you're the most reminder heavy one of us, remind me, and we will make between the two of us some social media links posted on our Facebook that link you to maybe a playlist
Yeah.
of some of these great
The
moments. so you can
promos, the
sink your teeth in.
matches. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
no, that's
sure.
a great idea.
So hit me number two.
Yeah,
Jafar.
so number two for me, it's good that I was following Doc because he was talking about what Savage was doing in '97, and at the same time, the rest of the NWO was feuding with Sting, which is my number two. Now, before I dive into the details, earlier when I was talking about what makes a feud great, I mentioned the payoff. This
Well.
particular feud had no payoff. Possibly the worst.
The worst.
Oh, God.
The
out
most
of any
WCW.
feud. The most
So WCW.
botched finish of any pay-per-view that I can recall in recent memory. But so my number two is Sting versus the NWO from '96 to '97, the very end of '97.
Yeah, they waited.
Yeah, December 28th of '97 to be exact.
That was so. The heat on that was fucking incredible.
Yeah, so
Oh my
so
God.
it started
Another world.
from the inception of the NWO. It was Sting, it was Luger, it was Savage against the Outsiders and the Mystery Third Man, which we all ended up knowing was Hulk Hogan and the birth of the NWO. NWO was fucking red hot
So
at
hot.
the time.
You can never explain it to somebody who didn't live through
Yeah,
it.
yeah. It's there's a lot of moving parts there. So leading up to Fall Brawl, fake Sting, which was part of NWO.
Yep.
They put together a video package of Luger getting attacked by fake Sting. Luger thought it was really Sting, so at Fall Brawl, Sting's like, hey, it wasn't really me, I'm going to beat the shit out of the NWO, which they did, but then Luger's like, fuck you, I don't believe you. Why did you attack me?
Did it too. He's like, Sting's the man, but now I don't trust him.
Yeah. So the following night, Sting comes out on Nitro and cuts just a scathing promo, basically saying, if you're with me and you got my back, I'm with you and I got your back. But to everybody else, the commentators, the locker room, the fans, fuck you.
You can stick it.
You can stick it. Those were his exact words. Claimed himself a free agent and said, you'll see me when you see me. I might pop in from time to time. And he fucking disappears.
I don't know if there was anything greater than that. Like, realistically.
Yeah. And so
he just starts listening to The Cure in his car a lot.
Yeah, so he decides to change his entire persona from the classic Sting face paint to the Crow, which was a popular movie at the time.
That was Scott Hall's idea. That was his idea.
I fucking love that. Like,
it's so great.
First of all, we never did a Scott Hall episode, and I think we should do a Hall and Nash episode, or NWO in general. Scott Hall's greatest contribution could be the fact that it was Sting the Crow. Of all the shit that he did. And that's so fucking cool.
Can we make it meta and do a music episode with it and have it Hall & Oates and Nash?
I fucking love you.
Thank you.
I fucking need that in my life. Hall & Oates. Was Sting a man-eater? We'll find out.
We will find
out.
So he started just showing up random times, dropping from the ceiling, coming out from the back, dressed in black, trench coat, baseball bat, just targeting members of the NWO.
Now hold on now. You're skipping a really important part of this. It didn't start that way. We didn't know where he was for a while. We didn't know where his alignment was.
Yeah.
So when he did start dropping him,
Nobody knew what he was going to do.
The first real time he lays hands on the NWO, the pop was something else entirely.
Oh my god.
Because they're like, he's a free agent, which way is he going to go? Mm-hmm. He's wearing black and white, which the NWO was wearing at the time, so it's like...
Because there was a couple times, a couple Nitros, where the NWO would be around and Sting would just be standing with them, not doing anything. Mm-hmm. But he wouldn't attack anybody he was basis, but he was just
them.
Judging.
He was
thinking
judging
about it.
Yes.
And there are two moments that can't be understated to sell this. One, which was Arn Anderson's promo that I alluded to earlier. After Sting, and they didn't know who was the fake Sting and who was the real Sting, and Anderson does, and one of the great things about Nitro that nobody does anymore, and if you were going to just fucking steal something from wrestling, they should be fucking doing this, where that when people were, the commentators were putting over the next segments, wrestlers without music would just come over to the commentary table, they'd put the headset on, and they'd start fucking cutting promos about the state of the business. It felt real, felt organic. And Arn Anderson's like, I gotta talk for a minute about Sting. Every one of us left WCW. Everyone, Flair, gone. Me, gone. Tully, Barry, gone. Or they came here, but Sting was the one who stayed in to see him turn his back on us.
Yep.
And it's like, fuck yes,
God bless Arn Anderson.
And he did that. And then the second most famous cuck in the history of the world, Tony Schiavone. Fucking, what is Sting doing?
Who's number one?
Oh, Leonardo, of course.
Obviously.
Fuck my wife. Hey! Tag team my wife! Are you guys? Hey! He was meeting people at a gas station, rolls down his window. Hey! And then in the back, Tony Schiavone's like, hey! He's like, but Schiavone's like, what is Sting doing? Is he this guy? Is he that guy? I don't know. It's Jerry Seinfeld for some reason.
I was going to say, you had real
what is going on with Sting? No, but seriously, Tony Schiavone, the clueless dumb fuck, kayfabe-wise, ever. He's just selling it. What is Sting doing? And then Bobby Heenan, always right behind him. He's like, I knew it. And then he's like, I never trusted him. Yeah. I knew it. And that's the shit that kept you going. You can't really explain that to somebody. The energy. That fucking Nitro in 96, 97 was fucking anarchy.
It was a whole fucking vibe, for sure.
Entire episodes would just start with somebody getting their ass beat.
Fans, we're here on WCW Nitro, Jacksonville, Florida. Just
random
Rey
shit.
Mysterio getting stomped and blonde darted.
Matter of fact, there one episode with the feud with Savage and DDP. There's the beginning of the fucking show. The limo shows up with the Savage and Liz in it, and DDP had the first 30 seconds of the show. DDP shows up kicking the fucking window and puts his fucking foot through it to get the Savage because he put his hands on his wife. That's so fucking real. It was so
good.
intense.
And then in True WCW, they cut back and it's like, here's fucking Mortis
Here's Prince Iakea.
versus Prince Iakea opening the
This
show.
stupid
Fans, we'll let you know.
matches.
We'll update you as soon as there's an update on the condition of the limo. Fuck.
You know, and I remember when the fake Sting attacked Luger. I had that shit on tape back when I recorded both Raw and Nitro. I would pause record and
Yeah.
switch channels between commercial
It was
breaks.
peak
Coming out of the
Monday Night
limo, kicks him. Yep.
I remember, and I was sold. I was like, fucking Sting. Because I didn't have DVR. It wasn't high def.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell. You really
You got a
couldn't. It was
13-inch
dark.
TV. You're watching in your room.
Yeah, you
Luger
could
couldn't
not
tell.
tell.
He was
See, the
sitting
dude
there.
looked kind of like Steve Borden, you know?
See, I had the privilege. So that time of my life, we didn't have air conditioning on the second floor of our house. It was only like the window unit on the first floor.
Yeah.
So I would always sleep downstairs in like the living room because they're just too goddamn hot upstairs. But I was the only one who did it. So I would watch Raw until 11, and then of course, you know, everybody goes
Watch
to
the
bed,
replay.
and I fucking turn on TNT and then have the replay of Nitro from like 1 to 4.
What a summer.
And I
What
loved
some
it.
summers,
like
man.
summertime
Oh.
was great for that reason because
You
you know
stay up
that
till 1 a.m. watching
I would,
wrestling
I
for
would,
5
I
hours.
would stay
Yep.
up till like 4 o'clock in the morning, and then like sleep till 11 o'clock. And I'm just like, why are you always so fucking tired?
Like, fuck the NWO.
Because the disciple just got his ass beat, Mom, on WCW Nitro. It's crazy.
wouldn't
I have to watch the street,
Jafar,
Mom.
you cannot explain the awesomeness of this feud without explaining the absolute fucked finish.
It was-
This payoff was so incredible.
It was, it cut me real deep.
Cut everybody deep. I've not healed.
So the lead up to Starrcade '97 was Hogan versus Sting. Like,
He didn't say it though. He just would have signs.
yeah. And so we get there, and it was a pretty short match. It's only 10 minutes or so.
Was that all it was?
No, you can't. You're doing. First of all, you can't. I'm not to step on you. I'm sorry here.
Wait, but I'm gonna step on
please.
it.
But I'm gonna tromp all over it because like J.J. Dillon, the third biggest cuck in the history of wrestling, was sitting there. He's like, Sting, what do you want? And Sting's literally holding a fucking sign that says Sting wants Hogan.
He
And
wanted
JJ's
to
like,
talk, yeah.
but what do you want? Tell me. It's like trying to communicate with your wife about dinner. Like, fucking help me out.
That made that the truth.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But this also had the ability that this coincided with Bret Hart coming to WCW
Yes.
after
This was-
The
Montreal.
Yes.
hottest professional
This
wrestler in the
was,
world at that moment.
Bret Hart's debut
It couldn't
was part of this match.
fucking shoehorn more heat into a small area than you had for this match.
You know, they fucking did. They put Brett as a special guest referee. No, special guest referee
in a
between
different match.
Bischoff and Zabisco,
They did.
which they had no business doing.
Nope.
No fucking reason to do it. And then, I'm sorry, Jeff, go on.
So there was debate for the entire day leading up to this match of how it was going to finish. And there's stories and articles and podcasts and discussions about Sting and Hogan both wanted it their way. And Bischoff had an idea, and Hogan had an idea, and Sting had an idea. And none of them were on the same page.
Nope.
And it just turned into a debacle and a shit show
This
in
was
the
the
match.
end of Game of Thrones.
It was a botched finish. It was supposed to be a quick 3 count.
Oh my God, I forgot
It was a
about
regular
that.
3
Yep.
count. Bret Hart came out, refused to let them ring the bell, restarted the match. It was not good.
You had two
It
options
was not good.
for the finish of that match. Hogan drops the leg on Sting, and Nick Patrick counts it fast. Bret Hart coming out makes sense.
Yep.
Hogan drops the leg, Nick Patrick counts regular, Sting kicks out.
Right.
Of all the possible combinations of this thing,
Worst
Hogan
series.
drops the leg, Nick Patrick counts regular, and Sting stays down
not kick
was the
out.
worst fucking option, and that's exactly what happened.
I love when you watch that match and it's a normal count, but the announcers, I mean, they got to do the job. They're trying to sell it like it was fast.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. There was nothing fast about
No.
that.
It was steady as shit.
It was like
His Nick,
text.
It's almost like Nick Patrick is the son of Jody Hamilton, the Destroyer, or whatever his gimmick, Mr. Wrestling or something. And he's been in the business for 30 years. He knows how to count the 3 with a
Right.
consistent motion.
Right. So then Brett comes down. He makes him look like a fucking idiot.
Yep.
Because he's like, oh, it's not going to happen again. He beat him. What do you mean not going to happen
Hogan
again?
beat him.
He fucking beat him clean, actually.
Yeah.
Straight
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to look clean, but it was as clean as could be.
I don't know if I've ever seen a bigger fucking flub.
And everyone's just
No,
like,
it's the biggest
everybody
ever.
in the back is like, oh, what the fuck do we do now? Like, we totally fucked that.
No, and there's so many like small unicorn moments that happen that you couldn't imagine with a match that big. With all of that heat going
It
into
was
it.
18 months in the making.
Yeah.
And they couldn't
Yeah.
get the match down.
they just
they couldn't
completely
figure it
botched
out
it.
until the payoff. and they fucked it up, and you had the Bret Hart screw job stuff on top of that, and you had that. This was like all of this built up to this, and then not only that, and the WCW flubbed it so hard. Also, post match, the crowd live didn't understand what was going on, but they still popped. Confused. Yeah, they still popped when Sting won the match, right? Yeah. And Bret Hart called for the bell, and then Sting hasn't spoken a word in 18 months.
Yes.
And he grabs the belt, and the camera comes up to him, and he goes up to it, and he says something in Spanish.
He 100% says something in fucking Spanish. something mamacita.
Me and Drew looked at each other like, was that really Sting this whole time?
Was that the big Sting?
I'm like, is that fucking El Dandy? You don't disrespect El Dandy.
It's fucking Silver King in there the whole time.
Right. But here's the same thing, too. Because you think about how did WCW blow that momentum? That happened.
That was peak WCW.
All right, and then less than 6 weeks later, Mike Tyson shows up on Monday Night Raw and shoves Steve Austin. And McMahon's like, you fucking ruined it. No one ruined fucking nothing. Because we're going to WrestleMania, and Austin is in full swing. Yep. And that is why we talk about WCW being bought for a handful of pennies. Man. And how they botched it.
Such opportunity in their fucking hands, and they just fumbled so hard.
But we're talking about the build-up sometimes being better than the orgasm. Fucking Sting and NWO. That was a good stroke,
in this case, it was some good-ass sex. They just couldn't finish.
Dude, just the whole build-up. All those months. Sting dropping down, beating people up.
People were just fucking tuning in
just for that.
Oh, yeah. You're just waiting. Yeah. Because you watch the crowd on any Nitro. Pick a Nitro between the start of the NWO and that. People are like this. They'll look it up.
Yeah.
Where the fuck
he wasn't even doing anything. He's just standing up there.
At one point, he had a fucking
vulture. Chris Jericho and Eddie Guerrero would be in the ring. People are looking up like, where's Sting?
Yeah.
It's the wrestling equivalent of being in the middle of sex, and you're getting so fucking close, and you're about ready to come, and then you shit your pants. And you never came. You just shit. You're like, wrong.
Why were your pants
wrong fluid?
What day?
That's like biologically impossible. Jesus Christ.
No, it isn't. WCW would have found a way.
The feud, fantastic. The finish, atrocious. But that's my number 2 feud.
Damn.
All right, Mac.
Your number one.
Number one.
With a bullet.
Get the number one with a bullet.
Fucking, yeah.
This is, I think, there are a lot of great feuds in wrestling. There are a lot of great feuds that we're talking about here today. There are a lot of great feuds we're not going to talk about today. I think this is my favorite feud.
Awesome.
It is a tag team feud. Dear listeners, it is the Hardys versus the Dudleys versus Edge and Christian. 1999 to 2000, special emphasis on WrestleMania 2000, WrestleMania 17.
What a time.
Just what those you had 3 tag teams, right? That couldn't have looked more different.
Nope.
Then couldn't have really wrestled more different. But when they fucking came together, whether it was 2 of them, all 3 of them, fucking magic happened.
It was legendary.
It was absolutely legendary. We had the birth of TLC. We had tables matches. We had ladder matches. We had tables, ladders matches. We had tables, ladders, and chair matches. We had a trilogy of tables, ladders, and chair matches.
It's fucking smart, too.
Some of the greatest spots that we look back on that has probably set a precedent for a lot of other wrestling promotions to this day come from those guys. It was just so much fun to watch because they stole almost every show they were in.
Oh, yeah.
At a time when WWE couldn't have been fucking hotter.
Yeah, I mean, it made you care about tag matches again.
Yeah.
There was a long lull from the fucking Rockers and the Bushwhackers.
And the Brainbusters and all that shit before you actually cared about it.
Yeah, before you cared about any of that. And these guys just brought it.
Oh, no, and it was incredible because think about how organic that was, too. First of all, here's 6 guys that were not stars.
Nope.
By any stretch of
No.
imagination, and this is what made them stars. And you have two guys who were the prototypical wrestlers to that
Yeah.
time, Edge and Christian. And you had two guys that had worked their way up from being job guys who looked like they robbed the Hot Topic, the Hardy Boys.
Yep.
And you had two guys that looked like they were the guys calling your name, following you outside of a bar because they wanted to have sex with your girl, but that's not your girl, that's your long-haired friend. Right? Joe spilled it.
Joe just spilled his beer.
That was
And the
good.
Dudley Boys, right?
Yeah.
But it's also organically. So what made the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian together was their ladder match in No Mercy '99, the Terry Reynolds Invitational, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The tit match, which I fucking kudos to Russo on that one. That's an acronym for the ages. But that started the idea that all of these little gimmick matches that would build up to the
Yeah.
legendary shit.
On March 19th, 2001, on an episode of Raw, all three of them were tag team champions. All three.
That's awesome.
In the same night,
On the road to WrestleMania 17.
the belt changed to all three. I mean,
pretty
that's
cool.
that's they're just it's amazing. I loved watching it. I loved experiencing it. Herb, what? Get the house!
Yeah.
Yeah, it was iconic.
It's like-
I didn't
that.
know I needed that, but I got it.
Sounded
But-
well rehearsed.
but
Yeah.
you think
No, it
oh,
wasn't.
oh, it's not.
We haven't done that in years.
But we do it all the time. You had guys who I wouldn't even call them mid card really at that stage, but
Nope.
again, you have and kind of going back to what we talked about at the beginning, what makes a good feud. For number one, this had legs. This lasted over the course of 3 years with them constantly trading the belts back and forth and all the different matches that they had. You had a bunch of guys who all pushed each other. They all elevated each other. They all got better, I think, because of them. I don't think if you have this feud, Jeff Hardy's anything. I don't think Matt Hardy... Well, Jeff Hardy, I think, has kind of had a little bit more of the shine on his career than necessarily Matt has.
Well, one of those one member of each of those teams had more shine than the other. It's the Marty Jannetty, Shawn Michaels.
No, it's but
Right.
I just in terms of just like the you don't have there's no edge. I don't think you have edge.
Oh, no. Not that way.
without this. Not to the level that he was able to ascend to over the years. They're all Hall of Famers. Of course, as they've kind of gone on their careers and gone to different promotions, they've been champions. Bubba Ray and over the years and everything. But just great. WrestleMania 17. Just
Half of the people in that match, of that feud, of the six guys, 3 of them won the WWE Championship.
Yeah.
Or the World Heavyweight Championship.
That's something.
3 of them.
yeah.
That says
Right.
something.
Says a lot.
Yeah, so it's in a tag team feud that before that this really got started, nobody gave a shit who they were. And the No Mercy match in '99 was a time filler that they just gave people that they knew would do something with the time. There it is, and then you had that ladder match between the Hardys and Edge and Christian. Then you had the Hardys versus the Dudleys in a tables match at Royal Rumble, and that morphed into a triple threat ladder match that happened to use tables and chairs. And that's also not to include the fact that every team had a third. You had Spike Dudley getting over
Right.
from that. You had Lita getting over with the
Right.
Hardy Boys, and you had Rhino getting over with Edge and Christian. There was collateral damage, all pun intended, all the way around on this feud. And it's like, I don't think we'll ever see a mid-card tag team match that didn't even need to have the championships elevate so many people for so long. It makes so
Agreed.
much fun.
They became household names,
Yep.
Yeah.
like easily. I mean,
Those and again when those matches were on the card and it was gonna be a tables match or a TLC match or anything, it was the highlight of the show. We talked about a long time of how we loved Money in the Bank at WrestleMania.
That's one of the
That was one of the great. I mean, talk about getting a bunch of mid card guys and having them have a 25-minute, 30-minute showcase. But that match in a lot of cases started to steal WrestleMania.
Well, you made a star,
Yeah.
and it was hard to top it for
Right.
at least an hour after.
Yeah. So we had to move it to be its own pay-per-view, right? These guys, to me, would always steal the show. I look forward every night when they were on.
and I mean, I don't think I even have to argue this with you guys. I think there is no Money in the Bank without them doing what they did those years prior.
Oh,
They
no
made
doubt.
Money in the Bank what it is. You know what I mean?
A big
Easily.
time ladder match spot fest at WrestleMania. That's the whole reason the Money in the Bank exists.
It's
Yep.
pretty wild to me. Their lasting impact as 6 individuals.
It's the Money in the Bank
You
ladder
know?
match in a lot of ways.
Like the spots. And look, I'm not a huge fan of matches and that shorten careers. I'm not, but I can't deny how entertaining those matches were.
No.
You know, I mean, they were great.
There were some stupid bumps that
Yeah, like,
those
what?
matches.
That's-
But think about what that also did for wrestling, because you didn't have
elevated it,
You,
for sure.
you had Hell in a Cell, you had Undertaker throwing Mick off before all this stuff started happening, and everything, but you didn't. But once you started having these TLC matches, everybody did it. It was everywhere.
Yeah, it was huge. Probably one of the best impacts I can ever say, which is why people today that would never even call themselves wrestling fans talk about, oh, I love the Hardy Boys or the Dudley Boys. It's because I remember distinctly watching TRL and after school one day, and there was a promo for Sunday Night Heat. They basically only was the Hardys and Edge and Christian jumping off shit onto each other, and they would air it with the promos for Jackass or the promos for these other gimmick shows or Road Rules or some other shit. But that's the only thing that MTV, who fucking aired Sunday Night Heat and music videos once upon a time, just used that footage of that shit over and over again. The Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian jumping into each other, the Dudley Boys.
Oh, they knew their demographic.
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
that's what it was, because they became cultural, like super over mid card for that. And it's a travesty that because of politics, half of that match is not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Half of that match is still not in the Hall of Fame. They will be. I'm just worried that they're going to wait until the Hardys are dead, or at least one of them is.
That's wild to me.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. That should not be the case.
They deserve their moment, man.
I don't know how the Hardys are still alive.
Fuck, I don't know how Jeff isn't dead
everything
yet.
that they've kind of put themselves through.
They're still taking stupid bumps.
They are taking stupid bumps.
Cocaine.
Oh, okay.
You know, for anybody that wants
That too.
to, I mean, we were fortunate enough to be really growing up when this was happening. For those of you that maybe have never given it the time, just go ahead and give yourself an opportunity of watching WrestleMania 2000, SummerSlam 2000, WrestleMania 17.
Yeah. 3 matches that you think could not possibly improve upon themselves.
Oh, man,
they do. They do. I would add honorable mention Royal Rumble tables match in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
The Hardy Boys and the Dudley Boys. That was from that Royal Rumble was fucking incredible. That's to me, if you're talking about, I still think 92 is the best Royal Rumble of all time. We covered it, available in the archives for the second time today.
I don't remember that episode.
If you're
at
talking
all.
about, but if you're talking about Grundle undercards, it's because I was going to do the under motion.
You got to cup the ball.
Yeah, you got to cup
The balls.
not counting the Rumble match. I don't think WrestleMania Royal Rumble 2000 any Rumble's ever close, because you have that match and you have the fucking Triple H Cactus Jack match.
Such
Garden,
a
one of the
great
fucking
match.
best matches that is not in a Mania ever. Oh my god! But yeah, 100%. Good call. Good call. All right. In that vein, my number one fucking call, because if we're gonna talk about brutality and shit that made people a fucking star, my number one feud that is not Hart and Austin is The Rock and Mankind / Mick Foley. Like, you're talking about, we started down this fucking road in our Survivor Series 98 two-parter episode,
Right.
also available in the butt fucking archives.
Great episode, by the way.
But yes, which saw the idea of Brock positioned as a babyface and Mankind is this piece of shit suck up. Totally, you could sympathize with him heel, and they switched you on a dime with a double turn at Survivor Series 98. And now The Rock is the piece of shit heel, and everyone feels bad for Mankind, and they motherfucking rode that wave until the build up for WrestleMania.
They really
with
did.
Some of the, well, I'm just going to call, I still think Royal Rumble that year is one of the most brutal things anyone has ever done in the history of wrestling.
I
Like,
hard agree.
It is tough to watch. Like, it is sickening and difficult to watch.
There's no barbed wire. There was no exploding rings. There's no fluorescent bulbs. No one was jumping off of like a ladder. It was just violent,
It was exceptionally violent,
unnecessarily.
unprotected, handcuffed behind your back.
I do.
Chair shots that just made, to this day, this man forgets sometimes where he lives because of that match. But before that, as brutal as that is, one of the most pure-hearted moments in wrestling history, that despite all the odds, the guy that couldn't get hired by the WWF because of how he looked, because he was a deathmatch wrestler, he used to light himself on fire, had his ear ripped off by Vader in Germany, fucking climbs the mountain and against all odds beats the Golden Boy and becomes WWF champion. Goosebumps. Now, still thinking about
Massive
like
pop.
that is, and I'm not getting political for a second, but when George W. Bush was elected president, my dad said, "Well, anything's possible. Anyone can achieve any kind of dream." Well, when Mick Foley won the WWF championship, and fucking anybody If you fucking are good enough, it doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter what you do, you can fucking do it if you're in the right place, the right time, and the right set of skills. And that is just one of the all-time moments in the history of Raw. If you ask me, which is the most important wrestling show in history, top 5 moments, Mick Foley winning the belt, dude. And we don't get there without that Survivor Series 98, but we don't get to the Rumble, the most dastardly thing I've ever seen a heel do, which was assault a man 16 times to the dome while he's handcuffed in front of his actual kids.
Yes.
Looking his kids in the eye while you brain him so hard, he legitimately didn't remember where he lived. First of all, watch Beyond the Mat. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yes, watch
that. But to know we still had more to go in that feud after that.
Yeah.
The first ever halftime heat with the Super Bowl halftime where the Rock gets pinned by the aid of a forklift.
That's so great.
Which is the silliest fucking camera shot in the history of pro wrestling.
How about the fucking hubris of Vince McMahon to be like, I'm going to go up against the Super Bowl halftime show.
And
wrestling was so hot, they could just do it.
And
that's my point.
Yeah. He did. And then for all of that to happen, which ends ultimately in that short term with Mick Foley being involved in the main event of the first Austin Rock WWF Championship match at WrestleMania, for them to turn all the way around. And if I were to say Mick Foley and The Rock, what do you think of? You don't think about that. You think about The Rock and Sock connection. Because you went from that fucking barbaric shit to one of the most wholesome things to ever come out of the goddamn Attitude Era.
Yeah.
A dude with a sock. And The Rock, and it was just fucking. It's like to me that's like describe WWF Attitude Era. Well, there was this guy. He had a sock. He got brained in front of his kids, but they became friends and they love each other in the end. And they eventually teamed up to lose to Randy Orton. It was magical.
Now, at one point earlier in this episode, we talked about Austin and Rock, and I started to say, and I didn't get a chance to say how one of the things that made their feud so great, I think, is because they're so different. They're very opposite. I don't know if it gets more polar opposite than Mick Foley and Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't really think it exists.
Not realistically. I don't think realistically.
Like wrestling style, the way they look, the way they talk, the way they walk, everything about them was totally
one looks
different.
like he's chiseled out of stone, and the other one looks like like you added water to the stone and whatever muck was on the ground.
He came out from under the stone.
Yeah.
Remember those things you used to get out of you would get from the drugstore where it was like a little pill. And if you just add water, it's going to turn into a dinosaur.
Yeah.
But it never, ever fucking looked like the dinosaur in the box. It just looked like Mick Foley.
I'm going to use what Rock said in the promo once, because whenever
I
think about Mick Foley and their feud, for some reason, this one line he says, Mick Foley looks like a 500-pound gorilla came down, took a crap, and out rolled Mankind's monkey ass. That's how The Rock saw Mankind. He looked at him, he's totally beneath him. He was just some dirty, creepy man.
I'm the future. I have third-generation pedigree, and you're a homeless-looking dude that mutilates himself for the benefit of 200 people. You're not in my league.
We're not the same.
Fucking clash, though, and you wanted it. You wanted every moment of it.
Yeah, they really fed off each other extraordinarily well. And there's a theme here, Mick Foley. Yeah, Mick Foley is so good at his job.
Yeah, Mick Foley was babyface then.
And
he was
98,
big time babyface too.
Yeah, and he was with DX, who was also babyface.
We shouldn't be surprised because Ric Flair, worked against Dusty Rhodes. I mean, again, there couldn't be two more polar opposite people.
Man, at least
to work together.
we're both white guys with blonde hair, and we can go that route.
That's true.
Yeah,
we can go somewhere.
They both beat Harley Race
some
for
sort
the belt,
of line
right?
we could draw between the two.
Yeah, but I'm saying I know where you're going with that, but it was so much more iconic because here's the thing: The Rock with his tights and his chiseled look, and the corporation, and Mick Foley's wearing dirty dress shirt and sweatpants. And we're not even paying attention to the fact that The Rock legitimately exposed Mick for wrestling in whitey tighties with a skid mark on him on national TV, and people didn't get grossed out. They're like, "Fuck yeah, Mick! I got a skid mark too." You fucking beat his ass.
You beat his ass.
You beat his ass.
I just think that I mean, of all their encounters, my favorite is definitely the Rumble. Although Valentine's Day Massacre is up there.
That is a great show.
Yeah.
That's an underrated pay-per-view.
Again, people don't talk about it often. I don't know why that is.
Because you think about the debut of the Big Show, and that's how much people really think about it. But man, there's some solid matches on that going into WrestleMania.
But I think that, ultimately, that Rumble match, I've watched that match a lot. Because I'm a big fan of The Rock, a big fan of Mick Foley. But to watch him hit him, the spot where he takes the bell and he goes, "Bells will be ringing." Bang! Like, Jesus Christ, man! You're gonna bust
That's
an
a man's
eardrum.
skull.
Like, what the fuck?
you
The
just-
match was
that's
so
brutal.
but you said it was so violent, but it didn't have the tropes that you have now with wrestling matches that are overly violent. It was just some weapons and just brutality.
Well, you also got to think Mick Foley had made a career up to that point of being unbelievably violent. But so it's like, how could you be that brutal and that violent, but within Vince's parameters?
You want to talk about, gentlemen? I feel like you know this, but do you guys? You ever heard of the Nestea plunge?
That's gross.
Isn't that something?
It's the grossest
is
thing
it-
you've ever seen.
You say the Nestle plunge?
No.
Nestea plunge.
The Nestea.
So,
Okay,
okay,
no.
so the Nestle plunge, we're not talking about something that's at Hershey
No,
Park.
so the
It's
Nestea-
like a
Nestea
water
plunge.
ride
First of
there,
all,
right?
yes.
So, yeah,
There
yeah.
used to be a commercial where people for Nestea iced tea in the 80s and early 90s, where they were like talking about how flabbergasted they were, about how thirsty. So they do a splash backwards into a pool full of Nestea iced tea to show you how refreshing and life-changing Nestea was. Proceed.
I read this in Mick Foley's book, and it gave me a different perspective on him as a human being.
Did the Nestle plunge like
It's a
fall into
spot.
Mick Foley?
It's a spot. He called the Nestea plunge.
Yeah.
That he did for a while, like a long while.
Too long.
So this
Once
spot,
is too long.
yeah, goddamn, never doing it is a good idea. So the spot, which was his idea, I'm pretty confident, was he'd be on the apron, and someone would hit him off the apron, and he would do a flat back onto the concrete.
Not pants.
Onto the concrete.
flipping.
And he would purposefully hit the back of his head off the concrete. Purposefully. To get color, to get blood
Off the back of his head.
off the back of his head. And he would do this over and over again to the point where he started getting like dizzy spells and it wasn't healing right. That man, Michael Foley, is cut from a totally different cloth than most human beings are.
He's not cut from cloth. He's cut from Kevlar.
Yeah. So like the level of punishment that he can physically take, and you can't pay me to do that. You can't pay me $1 million to do that because I don't know what's going to happen if I land the wrong way. There is no right way to land that.
You know?
Yeah.
There's no good way
So
to end that.
I
for
want
sure.
it while we talk about this, the Rumble specifically, like kind of put that in perspective. That Mick Foley was doing that years before, just willingly, actively, because he's that guy. He's the toughest man that probably exists in a certain way.
In a legitimate way.
Yeah. But yeah, that match was so good, but it was so unnecessarily violent, and
My number one, that's not Bret Hart and Steve Austin.
yeah, that feud was so good, and it was funny, and it was the empty arena match was funny.
Yeah.
Like before delete before the Hardy compound, before AJ and Undertaker, before all that shit, we had
That
an empty arena match.
That was
right?
meta. And think about that, like, it all culminates with the babyface aspect. The highest rated segment in the history of Monday Night Raw is when they're both babyfaces, and This Is Your Life Raw.
Yep.
With Mick Foley. That's the highest rated segment in the history of professional wrestling in Monday Night Raw. Is that 15, 20 minutes. That went way over, by the way.
Yes.
And we don't get there without all the bullshit they put each other through. All right, Doc. It's time for your number one.
I'm going to try to set a little context without going too long, obviously. So, professional wrestling is a big deal. My formative years growing up. Mm-hmm. I didn't watch a ton of it when I was really little. We just didn't watch it. It wasn't a thing my parents were into. But I watched it through my aunt, Debbie, rest in peace. And so she would babysit me and my sister, and I would watch it, usually main event, WWF main event or something like that, Saturday night. And my earliest, and I've had this conversation with at least two of you, my earliest memory of life, or of two things. Hans being frozen in carbonite.
Beautiful.
For whatever reason, I just remember that's the first real image I have that I can remember.
Is it
and,
him
well,
getting-
hold on, please. And of Randy Savage being hit with a guitar by the Honky Tonk Man.
Montages.
So when I was growing up, like, you have those images in your head, you think, like, oh, you just made that up. Like, I knew the carbonite was real, but, like, I was convinced that I'd taken images and just put it together.
Yeah.
Little did I know I'd seen that live.
Yep.
On, like, NBC.
Saturday Night's Main Event.
Because that was the night, effectively, that Savage turned face.
Yep.
Because the Hart Foundation and the Honky Tonk Man had jumped him, and Hogan came out and saved him. And I think that's so. So this feud to me is really it's really a cool thing. Hogan and Savage, for my money, is the greatest feud of all time. for my money, is the most raw feud of all time. There was no blood. There were no crazy chair shots. But it was personal. And it was professional. Right? Because you have Randy Savage, who comes in as a heel. And all the big heel managers want a piece of him. But he wants Elizabeth. Right? Yep. He goes on, becomes Intercontinental Champion.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Elizabeth.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth. I'm sorry, excuse me. He becomes Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion of the world, yeah. And because he's badass, he's cool, he becomes a face at WrestleMania 4, and in a great showing, wrestling like 3 times at least, having a great match with Ted DiBiase. But it starts there. Right there. Because Savage wins the title. The first fucking thing Hogan does, he grabs the belt and hands it to him. Not the ref. Hogan does. Always hot dogging.
Cunt Hogan.
Always trying to, always stepping into the limelight. Always
grandstanding, hot dogging.
Hogan must pose.
So, but then we have the Mega Powers. Listen, we're talking 2 big-time baby faces. Obviously,
Unheard of.
Obviously, Hogan is the bigger of the 2. He is professional wrestling at that point, right? He's rocking wrestling. But Savage is the heavyweight champion of the world. And together with Elizabeth and her not really doing anything but standing around, they become the Mega Powers, and they explode in greatness. And for months, they're doing just fighting all heels, all comers.
Yeah, unbeatable.
But it's always there. This little line. Every time Hogan looks at Elizabeth a little differently, Savage notices. Every time he touches her, picks her up, Savage sees it. Savage gets eliminated by accident by Hogan at the Royal Rumble. Was it an accident? I don't know. Right?
Hogan said it was.
Yeah, Hogan said a lot of things. A lot of things.
He did, didn't he?
So
we'll talk about that another time.
yeah, and this. So there's so much happening with this. This leads us to, I don't know. It was a Saturday Night Main Event.
It was Saturday Night's Main Event.
And
February.
Liz takes a nasty fucking bump through Savage. Like, it looked good.
Oh, nobody was allowed to touch Elizabeth
but Savage,
except Savage. And when he went, he
knocked her the
shit
fuck
out
down.
of her.
He made it look legit. So Hogan carries her off, leaving Savage to get his ass whipped for a while, several minutes.
For too long.
For 2 minutes too long.
Yeah.
And look, I have seen heel turns that were great, that I didn't see coming, that were meaningful and impactful, but there's something about the raw nature of that scene, that segment, where Hogan is like, dude, what the fuck, man?
Well,
and
yeah,
Savage
all,
is in his face, and he's pointing at him, and he's like, listen, motherfucker, I'm done with this shit. And you could, I don't know about you, but you could see it from Savage's point of view. Another great, that's what makes this feud great, because was Savage really wrong?
Nope. No, he wasn't. And here's to add into that, right? They did it in 2 parts on that episode. They had Savage, well, for what would be known as martelling somebody after that, right? They had Hogan comes back.
Yeah, he does come back.
And he does come back, and Hogan once in, and Savage is like, he attacks him, and he's like, no, I'm fucking done with you. And
did he slap him in the face or something?
He does.
Yeah.
And he gives him the hands that I'm fucking done with you. You can come find me if you want to talk to me, kind of a thing. And he backs away and leaves Hogan to his odds, which he overcomes because Hogan must pose.
Right.
But the fucking part B.
It was so raw. Like, because look, these are 2 guys who, again, like, we don't get this anymore because wrestling has changed to the point where there are now performance centers and schools that are just throwing people out there. There aren't territories where people can really learn their craft, learn how to really perform for the camera. But listen, I sent that segment to you guys in the group chat, which I highly recommend everybody. Savage turns heel 1988, 1989. Throw that in your YouTube and you will find it. And it is, if it doesn't give you goosebumps, you're dead. You're not alive. There's no way, because it's like a masterclass of how do you go from being like a number 2 babyface to being the number 1 heel in seconds. And like, because it wasn't just like what was being said; it was the body language. And he keeps pointing at Hogan, pointing, he's like, "Get out of my face!" Keeps swinging his hand.
Elizabeth is just in fear,
and
behind
the whole thing.
Yeah.
But to be fair, if you look long enough, legit, Liz looks like she's trying not to laugh.
Well, like, I mean, how many times have you guys been out in a bar? Or, like, been outside in, like, the bar district and everything, and you see two people standing outside, and they're just screaming at each other, and there's, like, a girl in the middle just like, don't do it! Just don't! Just walk away!
Brad, walk away,
Stop.
Brad!
You don't have to do it! It's not worth it,
No,
Brad. It's
Ashley,
not
I'm
worth
gonna
it.
do it. I'm gonna do
It's
it.
not worth it!
Yes.
That's what was happening here.
And then it gets real because Savage is like, he laid it all on the table for him. If you really go back to that segment, and everything hinges on the segment.
Yeah.
If it fails, I mean, Savage still turns heel, but it's not the same.
He doesn't feel the way.
But he lays it all out for him. And if you really listen to what they're both saying, Hogan doesn't say shit.
Hogan's just denying it.
Yeah.
Like, well,
Deny.
What I do.
like if you were working with somebody and you ended up fucking their girlfriend, right? And they come at you with all the facts in front of you, but you still don't want to do it. You're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Here's what's going on. You're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Because that's all Hogan did. But here's a fun fact. And for the people that are listening to this that haven't seen it, part B of that Saturday Night's Main Event is Hogan goes back to the training room where Elizabeth is recovering from her nasty getting taken out by Savage. And Hogan's like, Liz, you got it. Savage is laying. Hogan comes in and Savage is there. And Savage is like, what the fuck are you doing here?
Yes.
Haven't I made this clear? Get the fuck out of here. And Hulk's like, what are you talking about? We're a team. I'm checking on her. He's like, get the fuck out of here right now. And Savage walks away and Hogan starts pleading with Liz. You gotta talk to him.
Some sense.
He's going crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And then Savage fucking creams him. Fucking hits him so hard. Now, then, when you're a kid, you're like, oh no, not Hulk Hogan. Oh, Macho Man, you're a dastardly person. But anyone with a fucking brain, you're like, get him, Macho. Fucking get him. Hit him
Come
harder.
on, Randy. Give it to him.
Yes.
Here's a fun fact about that. That segment almost didn't happen. Like, almost didn't come out because that shit was shot time to tape. They didn't have a chance to really edit that shit in as much as they could. And so they're working back. And Dick Ebersol, the head of NBC Sports and head of NBC eventually at that point, is counting everybody down. We need to get this segment in. We need to get this shit in. We have to have it and hit the spot. It has to come in close. And so when Savage walks away, Ebersol apparently is pleading with him to get back in there. And Savage is like, no, wait. We gotta wait, and he's just sitting there seething and waiting. And Bruce Pritchard has said that he didn't think Savage was. They thought they were gonna miss their time because the episode was gonna run over. They thought they were gonna miss
They're
it,
running out of time.
and Savage waited to the right time and
That's
fucking
awesome.
creamed him, and boom, the mega powers implode.
Yeah. So, and this is okay. It's this feud. It's the Hogan, the Savage feud. Listen, WrestleMania 5, pretty good WrestleMania, but the main event was solid. Savage.
That's the whole. It's one matchup.
Yeah, like Savage is from again. I brought him up twice already. Before he is one of the greats of all time.
Ever.
Period.
Facts.
Yep.
He makes everybody look better than they are. But the reason why this feud, technically to me, is the greatest of all time, not counting Brett and Austin, is because Savage comes in, he's heel, turns babyface, becomes heavyweight champion at WrestleMania 4. He's big time. Mega powers explode. It's a really big deal for little kids everywhere and fans everywhere. He's a big time heel, Macho King. He runs wild for a couple years, and then he turns face at WrestleMania 7.
One of the greats moments.
I
of all
don't
time.
know if there was a better fucking character arc in wrestling, period, than Macho losing the career match against the Warrior, but then gaining Elizabeth at the fucking end. They had been separated since 1989, since WrestleMania 5.
Since the match between going in there and she sides with Hogan, and he's done with her, and she pleads with him. Then I don't know if no one really remembers the Saturday Night's Main Event, like the 3 after WrestleMania 5. It's her trying to talk to Savage, and he won't have her. He's like, you turned your back on me and us and all those Hulkamaniacs. You can have them. I don't want you. I'm done with you. You're trash. And he heals on her, and you feel bad for Elizabeth, but she goes away.
Yep.
And he gets Sherry, who was the fucking best call
Yes.
in the history of the world. Talk about if cocaine was a
Yeah.
person. Right? And I say the respect,
Sherry.
like a sensational Sherry fucking had it all. And I don't care, right? Like Sherry when she was a young girl, Sherry when she was the macho queen, or Sherry at the end of her unfortunately cut way too short life.
Right.
I'd fucking take a poke at sensational Sherry anytime, and I want her crazy as fuck the whole time. Like, I don't care. I tell my wife, honey, I want to poke sensational Sherry.
She's right there.
She's about to
She's
play.
literally right there.
She's about to play the flute anyway. So
Yeah, that I took for my money. That is the greatest feud of all time. It's the greatest build-up, a great payoff, and then the aftermath was just as good with
And they waited.
carrying that character arc of
waited.
Macho Man becoming Macho King and then swinging right back up.
From 5 to
There's a
7.
scene. Listen, I don't know if you guys have seen that WrestleMania match with Warrior and Savage, right? The match was great, actually, considering it was fucking Warrior, but it was because of Savage. But the payoff, man.
You don't care about the match.
When Savage, they're going to leave the ring, and Liz opens the ropes for him, as she has done for years prior, like she always did. Savage goes, no. And he pulls her aside and
opens the ropes
for her.
And,
fucking goosebumps, because that
right now,
is a change. That is such character development. That
was
was years in the making. And years of it.
To say something that a lot of these moments are going to have, just like the WCW stuff, just like, I think maybe not the Attitude Era stuff that we got to have there, but definitely the early stuff. What makes that moment even better is Bobby Heenan stops being a fucking heel.
Yes.
And he's like, this is
real.
He loves her and she loves him.
Dude, there are people crying in the fucking ring.
I cry every time I watch it.
People fucking legitimately crying in the audience watching this.
Roll credits, cut it.
We had been waiting years to watch Macho do that one thing and treat her with respect. And it took him becoming a fucking piece of shit heel. Twice.
The biggest piece of shit.
And then becoming a king. And then losing his career. And then becoming a babyface in the same night.
Well, not to hark on it too much, but in between, that was WrestleMania 5 when the Mega Powers explode.
Yeah.
And WrestleMania 7 when the arc comes all back together. WrestleMania 6, his involvement in Toronto, big WrestleMania, the same one Hogan and Warrior are on, is he and Sherry against Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire. Right? Dusty Rhodes makes an appearance again. And who do they show in the audience at WrestleMania 6? Elizabeth. Watching.
Just planting seeds.
Waiting for it. Like goosebumps. It's like, you don't fucking
this
get
shit,
that anymore.
This shit started in 1988 and paid off in fucking 1991.
Yeah. See, and we were fucking 7 years old and we were eating the shit out of that.
I'm 37 and I still eat the shit out of it.
So yeah, that is my number one. That is beyond me the greatest fucking feud I've ever witnessed or had the opportunity to witness after the fact.
I'm going to go ahead and say before you get going, David, I'm really wanting, because I know you've been trying to jump in there, I just want to raise a glass right now to the Macho Man Randy Savage.
I'll drink the Macho.
Fucking talk about gone way too soon.
For sure.
And fucking legendary in everyone's book to the Macho Man. So Mac, what did you want to say?
Well, so we were talking before the podcast started, and I stopped myself, and I want to make sure I had a chance to say it here. There's a reason why, as we're talking about the greatest feuds of all time, that Macho Man keeps popping up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's a wrestler who is as good as Macho Man Randy Savage has been, and can maybe also still be considered an underrated wrestler in the pantheon of professional wrestling.
I'll give you that.
I don't think that maybe bar Ric Flair, that there is a more complete wrestler in terms of what it is to be a wrestler. Some guys are amazing on the mic, and they're just okay in the ring.
Right.
They can do very, very well for themselves. Stone Cold, even after them, he was great before the injury, but after the injury, he was limited, right?
98 Austin.
Yeah. We always like to kind of over the years we've loved to give the Miz some shit.
Yeah.
But there's a reason the Miz has had staying power because on the mic he gets it, right? But to be a 9 or a 10 as a wrestler, to be 9 or 10 as on the mic, to be a 9 or a 10 as a storyteller in the ring and outside of the ring, and have all these iconic moments happen. I mean, do we give even as much due as we give Macho Man? Do we still give him enough due?
No.
We don't. Mm-mm. Because you can't. Because, we talked about never in wrestling would it ever has it happened since, or will ever happen again, having Austin and The Rock. But they had it with Hogan and Macho. But they realized, Vince wanting that payoff, which is, again, I wish they wouldn't have, but I'm grateful they did. Turn Mach back heel, and knowing that was the plan for a year-long story.
Yeah.
What is the world we live in like if Hogan never existed? What would that have looked like for Macho Man?
I mean, he's a second-generation wrestler. Here, let me ask you this. Let me piggyback on that and ask you this question. There are people who have never watched wrestling in their lives. That if you said name wrestlers, they're going to say Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, the Macho Man.
Mm-hmm. Facts.
And if you said impersonate one pro wrestler to anybody, almost every single person is going to do Macho Man.
Nobody doesn't have a Macho Man. Nobody.
No, nobody.
Because even if you weren't a professional wrestler, You watch Saturday morning cartoons, and you all fucking snapped into a Slim Jim at some point in your life.
You had to snap into a Slim
Jim.
Yeah.
You know, woo! And you know, oh yeah.
More people have him than they have a walking. You know what I mean? And everyone's Savage is better than their walking. That's like guaranteed.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but you're right. He transcends. But I agree with you. I don't think he'll ever get enough credit.
You know, I'm sure one day we'll have an episode where we talk about our favorite matches of all time, and you know, I go back to WrestleMania 3 between Steamboat and Savage. You know,
man,
that match,
hell of a match.
That match is the whole reason why Ring of Honor, AEW, Impact Wrestling, and most of modern high spot style independent wrestling can exist, because those two guys decided we're going to do 8 near falls in 25 seconds.
Yeah.
And every wrestler ever was like, oh shit. The only thing more influential in the history of wrestling was the first time Shawn Michaels decided to throw a super kick. That was it.
Yeah, you ain't lying.
No.
yeah.
That was it. It's incredible, and I'd love to do that. And there's so many ideas we have about just doing cherry picking matches throughout history. But speaking of history, it's now time. Jafar, take us home.
Let's
number
let's
one.
It really is fitting that you have the last pick on this one,
Why's that?
just because of what the pick is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward 10 years from Hogan and Savage.
Only 10 years, by the way.
Let's talk about
Crazy,
What a
right?
time.
peak
Crazy.
Attitude Era and the creation of the character Mr. McMahon and his feud with Stone Cold Steve
Oh
Austin.
my god.
In my opinion, one of the greatest feuds in all of wrestling. I mean, it epitomized the Attitude Era.
It is the Attitude Era.
It put WWF ahead in the Monday Night Wars, and it was just an exciting fucking journey to watch. You know, it started with Austin getting a shot at the title, Vince not wanting Austin to get a shot at the title,
Yep.
trying to sabotage and prohibit that as much as possible. He didn't want this badass guy, Stone Cold Steve Austin, to give a bad name to his kid-friendly WWF
I
programming.
love it so much.
Which is just absurd in and of itself. And he wanted to do everything he could to not let Stone Cold be champion. Enough so that he brought in Mike Tyson, Iron Mike Tyson, who ended up double-crossing McMahon
Right.
to give Stone Cold the belt.
Which only
against Michaels.
elevated the McMahon character to
Yeah,
even
because
further heights.
Yeah, because he, at that point, he was not very involved in the ring. He wasn't super jacked like
Nope.
he became.
I mean, he was,
shortly
but not
thereafter.
that way.
Yeah,
Not
that,
show jacked.
Not that way. But over the course of those few years, you know, obviously he wasn't wrestling against McMahon, which is why it makes it sort of a unique feud in and of itself, because it's like the company
Yeah.
and McMahon against Stone Cold Steve Austin. But along the way, those number of years from like 98 to 2000 and early 2001, just the amount and the lengths that Vince went to try to stop Austin from being Austin, to the point where he was fired and then rehired by Shane, which was also a double cross.
All of which
And
is
then-
covered in our Survivor Series 98
that's
episode.
right.
Yeah,
And that's part one.
Yeah, and then
Part one.
Yeah, and then ultimately in WrestleMania 17, Vince and Austin aligning and then unaligning later down the
Kumbaya.
road, and it was just so fun. And I mean, Austin, when you think about wrestling, you know, in that era, you know, we talked about Hogan and Savage and Flair and those guys and how like they were wrestling at that time. And in the Attitude era, it was Austin, it was Rock. And without Austin in that time period, I don't think we have professional wrestling what it is
No.
today.
No.
WWF doesn't win the war.
No. So, when you have a character like Stone Cold Steve Austin that has such a meteoric rise, and we have never seen it before, we have never seen it since, we may never see it again, right? How do you have him really face off against anybody who's his equal? There is no equal.
No, not in that way.
He is so far and above everybody else in the business.
Even post neck injury.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do? you find the only person who's really superior to Stone Cold Steve Austin,
And, like, shoot, yeah.
who is not a fucking wrestler at all. And then you give the one thing that every fucking person in the world can relate to. Because say everything we love to say about wrestling, it is so unfucking relatable to real life. It just is.
Yeah.
But you know what you can relate to?
You go to jail for everything.
Sticking it to your fucking boss.
That's it.
Everybody has that dream
And what a time.
of being able to go up to your boss, give him both middle fingers, and then just give him something that he will walk away from and ultimately not fire you over.
Right.
To be able to be so fucking big that you can look at your boss and say, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want to you, and you know you can't fire me, because if you fire me, you're going to be fucking closed door. Your business is done.
Yeah.
Because WCW is just going to walk away from it, right?
What a time.
And it just lends itself to the greatest feud of... You're right. There is no professional wrestling if that didn't happen.
No, not in the way we know it.
Not in the way we know it today.
No, and I have no... even if WCW wins the war, I don't trust WCW not to fuck up the entirety of all of wrestling for the rest
They
of
would
the
have
time.
WCW.
And we're sitting here talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Or some shit on a podcast. No, and it's interesting, too, because what all four of us put as number one are four different sides of an unbelievable thing. They're all part of wrestling. That you can't explain wrestling without these important, crucial parts. The ladder matches and the TLC and that pandemonium that happened in the mid card while some of this other shit that was going on. The rise of The Rock and Mick Foley. Fucking the mega powers exploding at the peak of Hulkamania and WrestleMania 4 and 5 and up until 7, and then fucking McMahon and Austin, which made more money than anything that we're talking about. And there wasn't... one of the guys involved wasn't even a fucking wrestler. They had 2 matches. 3 technically, if you ever want to count it. One where where Austin had his arm tied behind his back, and that was when Foley turned heel and came out as Dude Love right after WrestleMania 14. Then you had Austin and McMahon enter into the Royal Rumble as number 1 and number 2.
1 and 2, yeah.
And then St. Valentine's Day Massacre, an underrated pay-per-view. And they don't fucking touch again until they were in the ladder match here and there, right? Until the fucking turn.
Yeah,
Dude.
attacks with bedpans and ambulances.
The birth of Sokka.
Zambonis.
The
corporation,
Zamboni, the
the
beer
ministry,
truck.
the corporate ministry, the beer bath, the Zamboni truck.
You don't get the
fucking
milk.
thing.
You don't get the milk truck without the beer truck.
That's right.
No.
Well, just think about that
It's true.
too. For
Damn
Vince
true.
McMahon to have the wherewithal to know that we can continuously escalate this every week, because you never knew what Stone Cold was going to do week in and week out, right? The bedpan. The bedpan's iconic.
It really
It's just
is.
like
one of the most
5 seconds
iconic
of time.
moments.
It's
But
fucking
it stayed
absurd,
with you.
but
And it's
How do you
also-
feel about a doctor
Yeah.
and he turns? He's like, I don't know, nurse, and the nurse runs and he's like, oh god,
Yeah, I
boom, that's
love
it.
it,
It's
man.
like,
He starts punching his leg. Like, what the fuck is going on here?
fucking
You know.
the higher power.
Yeah.
Who's the high? It was me, Austin. It was me
yes.
all along, Austin. You're like, you
Here I am thinking it was
motherfucker.
going to be Jake Roberts the entire time.
Oh, yeah. It was supposed to be Christopher Daniels of all
Oh,
people.
God.
Listen,
Yeah.
I will tell you this, Jeff. Obviously my number 1 and 2 had nothing to do with McMahon and Austin ultimately. But you can't talk professional wrestling over the last 20 years,
40 years.
40 years,
long time.
without talking about the greatest heel of all time, Vince McMahon. Mr. McMahon, excuse me. Mr. McMahon is the greatest heel of all time.
No
I
doubt.
don't know if there is a more easily hateable character in wrestling
Oh,
history.
absolutely.
Outside of Stephanie.
great- the
Stephanie's the
greatest.
only. She's like, it's like 1A, 1-2.
No, see, I'm gonna get flagged from this on the internet, I'm sure, or who the fuck listens to our show, so it probably doesn't ultimately matter. But I don't think Stephanie could ever be considered in the conversation for the greatest heel of all time, because she continually cuts the balls out of wrestlers, but she can't ever get her comeuppance. The only time she ever gets comeuppance
fair
is when
statement.
she's on the ring apron and Triple H, her husband, accidentally bumps into her and sends her through a table or knocks her
I mean,
out.
I did
Yeah.
see Rock give her a rock bottom.
I mean, back in the day, yeah, but since then she's continued to cut the balls out of people and slap their face and walk away, and nothing ever happens.
Yeah,
Like,
she's a McMahon, but not the McMahon.
yes, a true heel can cut all the balls out of whoever they want, but when the time comes, you pay it back with some, so the person you cut the balls off of is a bigger star than when you initially went snipping. But yeah, McMahon's the greatest heel in the history of wrestling.
It's wild
It's
to me. And you know who we have to thank for that?
Bret the Hitman.
Bret Hart.
All goes back to Montreal.
It all comes back to
available in the
Yes.
archives.
Yes, which we will revisit one day in greater length
Sooner than later.
with more experience now.
Good call, gentlemen. All good calls from honorable
so.
mentions all the way through,
No
and
doubt.
it was a good call for everyone to join us here today, guys.
We're forgetting something.
We are forgetting something.
Oh yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay, just making sure.
I was
All right.
segueing.
Well,
Everyone to join us today, as we have made it 49 episodes into this journey, but there are questions to be asked still around the table. What is next for Nothing Good? What happens in the future? But more immediately, one last question on this topic.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start it off here. Who wants to go?
I'll
Raise
go.
your hand. All right.
I'll go right now.
Let me ask
I
this.
mean, it was my question, so I already had an answer.
Yeah.
Well, actually, then there are two questions that we had to ask.
Well,
So, Doc.
I knew he forgot. So
No. I thought my question that I proposed was the one. I thought everyone was like, "Oh, everyone remember my
What's
question."
the
now.
most important feud?
That was that, and then Dream Book. Which one do you want to do first?
I mean, I feel like the most important one is the most important one, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll go real quick through. If you had to book, in your mind, if you could pick two guys or two teams or whatever throughout wrestling history and put them in a feud that you wish you could have seen or you thought
Get it.
would be money. For me, I think Roddy Piper, 1979, 1983, before WrestleMania 1, when Piper was red hot heel. There are a few wrestlers as hateable as Rowdy Piper
When
in
he
the
kicked
late
Cyndi Lauper
70s.
in the face, red hot heel.
Dude was like a special type of arrogant and hateable. He'd come out and spend 3 minutes waiting for the match. He'd come out, take his jacket off slowly, get his bagpipes, play his bagpipe, take his kilt off, just getting heat. Just getting pissing
I
people
fucking
off.
love Piper.
Piper,
Piper's
and most
amazing,
people,
legend.
I mean me, I didn't watch Piper in his prime. Like ultimately I didn't. But I've gone back and watched old matches. Dude was
He was
so
a scrapper, yeah.
so
I fucking love
good.
that.
Yeah.
Him in 1997, 1998 Steve Austin. I'm telling you right now, their styles are very similar, obviously, but it's not about the styles clashing. Dude, it's the story they'd be able to tell.
Oh yeah.
A heel Piper. I mean, really heel Piper. Because back in the day, Piper had no problems with offending people.
No.
Zero issues with saying some shit that would get you cut. And he relished it because he didn't want to be cool. He wanted to be hated. Because heels want to, people want to see the heel get their ass whipped, basically.
Yeah.
But Red Hot Steve Austin as a face, but that brawler, flipping fingers, the whole 9 yards with that
working man.
Roddy Piper would just rake in cash, and the matches and the promos would be great. That's my pick.
That's a damn good thing. Oh my god, the promos.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
They even had a nice little thing in WrestleMania 21 when Austin was the guest on Piper's Pit. Wasn't the same because they were both out of ring shape and into that thing then. But you got a sliver of Piper being Piper and Austin being Austin before they shit canned somebody and Austin stunned Piper. But it wasn't.
Because you know what? Piper had the ability to, especially when he was young, and even in his later years, I mean, he still did it, but he had the ability to go from very kind of loose to dead fucking serious in your face in seconds.
Scary.
Yeah.
Because Piper feared no one. At least it didn't seem like he did. And I feel like that would be such a cool, that we will never see, obviously, but I would pay good fucking money for that fucking feud.
Nice.
Jeff?
Jafar.
Yeah, I think one thing I would have liked to see, and maybe it's more of just a single match than a whole feud, but peak Deadman Undertaker with Crow Sting.
I'd see
The
that.
match we never got.
I thought about
that
that.
we would love to see.
And a lot of loyal fan base were yearning for that as one of Taker's final Mania matches, and we never got it.
We
But,
did not.
for me, I would love to see that.
It would have been great.
Yeah,
The build-up would have been solid.
yeah, for sure.
I would have loved that.
Mac?
Oh, Canada. Oh, Canada. Give me Bret the Hitman Hart versus Chris Jericho.
All right.
Yeah, give me-
what year of both?
Yeah, what are we talking
Probably gonna go. I want them both at just past the peak of their physical ability, because their in-ring acumen would be that much stronger. So I'm gonna probably go 96, 97 Bret Hart, and probably 2015 Chris Jericho.
So we talking, when you say 97, are we talking heel Brett or right before heel Brett?
Well, see, this is the whole thing. Because as I was going back and forth on what this match would probably look like, I don't know who the face would be and who the heel would be. I want to say that I think the heel would have been Bret Hart. Because I could see Chris Jericho proclaiming that, or Bret Hart proclaiming he's the greatest athlete out of Canada.
Right.
And then Chris Jericho coming in with a little bit of a face there. But, I mean, I would probably think it'd be the other way around. I think Bret would be the face, and I think Jericho would be the heel. I want to see how they wrestle each other.
That'd be money.
I want to see what that looks like. Because, on
fun.
the mic, it'd be great. But I think inside the ring, because I've always said to you guys, Chris Jericho can reverse anything.
Yeah,
he's the
greatest reversal.
He's the greatest reversal wrestler of all time against the greatest technical wrestler of all time.
That'd be crazy.
Would just be amazing to watch the story, to watch what the pace of that match would look like, to hear the promos, to feel the heat coming out of it. That to me is because I've outside of Stone Cold, Chris Jericho is my favorite wrestler of all time, and I know him and Bret even when Jericho was so far down the card in WCW when Bret was there that it was never going to happen, and obviously Bret had his health issues, so it never could happen. But give me my the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be against the best in the world at what he does.
Yeah, I'm with that.
I dig that.
Yeah,
that'd be fun to watch.
So
Mr. Brown,
I'm gonna do something interesting here. First of all, I would love to see heel Bret Hart 97 against babyface post 9/11 Kurt Angle.
Cool.
And right.
Oh God, come
right,
on.
right.
That's too much, man.
Listen,
Right.
Too much.
Yeah.
Listen. That was the other match that I had. Even in the drive up here, I was going back and forth. Is it going to be Angle against Bret Hart or is it going to be Jericho against Bret Hart? And it wasn't until I opened my mouth and I looked you in the eye
And realized it was
that I
Chris.
went with Jericho. And I'm so fucking happy you said post 9/11.
See, that would be great, but I feel like that would be, you know what I mean? Like, we're all in the same respect too. Like, that's too much. That's too.
That's
a
Megaton
lot.
Heat.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So let me give you something creative here that tickled my thought. Babyface, 2004 to 2005, Eddie Guerrero against heel today, AJ Styles.
I'm with that.
All right.
That's
And you give
interesting.
heel AJ Styles 1989 Bobby Heenan as his mouth.
Oh, now we're
That's a whole other dynamic.
It's a whole
I
thing
fucking
with
love that.
right there, right? You know what I mean? Because the matches, right? They'll tell every story you could possibly tell where Eddie cheats better than the heel, and Bobby Heenan gets
Cheats better than the
frustrated,
heel, yeah.
and then Bobby steals one, and Bobby runs him down and gets the heat. You could take that fucking match to every live event across the fucking country, and that's your main event. And you don't need a fucking title. You don't need anything. You're just there. And that's just, take it any day. On their worst day, that'll be better than most of the stuff you'd see.
I agree. That's a great fucking call.
That's awesome.
I want to throw one real quick here because this isn't exactly. It doesn't really go with the rule because it is a feud that happened. But I would have loved to have seen old man Bret Hart against old man Shawn Michaels.
Oh, end of their
At the
run.
end of the run, around that time that Michaels was having his matches with Taker and with Flair and everything. And just kind of see what that would have looked like of the two old gunslingers facing off again. I mean, you couldn't print enough money if you put that match at WrestleMania.
Oh no! We will further discuss Montreal being a work and then what prevented it from being a work or a shoot
was
in
not
the
a work.
future. But let me tell you. Here's what I thought as soon as you said it. We build up to this. Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart, those guys 5 years ago from now, right? Healthy, no fuck you Goldberg kind of a shit happening to Bret Hart. Shawn Michaels is walking to the ring. He's got his wrist all taped up. Sure, he can still be bald as a motherfucker now. On his way to the ring, all of a sudden a car hits him. Boom! And the brakes screech. And Bret Hart just leans out of the driver's side and says, "Justice!" And then he peels out of here.
Justice.
Fucking done. Take my money. I'd watch that on fucking repeat. So let me ask you this. Lightning round to wrap this up, because we know this has gone long. What is the single most important feud in the history of wrestling? I'll start. It was Piper and Hogan. The Piper-Hogan feud was the reason we have WrestleMania. Without Red Hot Piper and Red Hot Hogan, and Piper kicking Cyndi Lauper in the face, and Hogan going out on the Saturday Night Live and all of that shit to build up, that match, Mr. T was cool. He was huge, right? And Paul Orndorff, don't take anything away from Mr. Wonderful and Bob Orton and Jimmy Snuka. But that match is there because you wanted to see Hulk Hogan get his hands on Roddy Piper. WrestleMania happens because of that feud. And without that feud, Hulkamania might have been short-lived. That's my opinion as the most important feud in the history of wrestling.
Doc?
Important?
Important.
Brett and Austin. Listen, we don't get Mr. McMahon. We don't get any of these things. We don't get what wrestling is today without Brett and Austin having their matches, having everything kind of lead to Brett and Shawn. And I'm going to go with it. Brett and Austin is the most important because the reverberations, like the after effects, have affected wrestling for decades since
then.
That's fair. And we're going to do a whole episode about that.
Oh, we're going to do more than
in
that.
the future.
For
me, I think the most important is Hogan, Andre the Giant.
Nice.
Ooh.
I think that's the first big feud that most people remember, and that's what sort of cemented the idea of a long-term feud. I mean, Hogan spent years getting his ass kicked by Andre the Giant.
He did.
Until he suplexed him. Or body slammed him, whatever. But I think that's the most important.
That's a good call.
If he suplexed them,
I'd like to see Hogan suplex
Hogan's
Andre
arms
the
would have
Giant.
flown off with him.
I knew what I meant.
They're saying they're still going.
As soon as it was coming out, I was like, yeah, fuck that up. Just like fucking Sting and NWO.
Taking it back.
Just flubbed it.
Mac, most important feud ever.
WWF versus WCW.
Ooh.
The Invasion.
The Invasion.
Good
Which
job.
we are going to fucking do that
It's-
show and that
it's-
whole thing.
Well, I mean, I'll even go a little pre-invasion. Just the fact that they were both relevant at the same time. Wrestling, I think, is at its peak when one is pushing another.
Monday Night War.
The Monday Night Wars. I think you need to have... you see when WWE and WWF can be at its greatest is when they need to be innovative, when they need to be light on their feet, when they need to do things out of the box and different to keep people's attention. And when they don't have anybody really competing against them, they don't do that. You see it in wrestling all the time. There are lulls, there are periods of time where you don't really give a shit about who's fighting who, even though you should, because there's some great matches and some great wrestling going on. But you need to have somebody who's fucking nipping at their heels.
Yeah, there's accountability there where it forces you to one up.
Right. And
To
that's
get better.
why,
Competition, man.
Yeah.
It makes everything
you need
better.
it.
when you had WWF and you had WCW and then you also had ECW, because I'll be honest with you, at that point in time, I got more fucking jacked for ECW than I did anything else at that point in time.
I just went on a business trip this week, and I'm sitting alone in a hotel room, like the first time I've been by myself without any member of my family
No pants.
overnight for so
no
long.
pants.
Yeah, no, of course no pants. And I'm like, what am I going to watch? You think I fucking watched Marvel that I put Disney Plus on? Oh no, I watched ECW Anarchy Rules 1999, which fucking opens up with Jerry Lynn and Lance Storm. Ah, man, with a bag of Fritos in my hand. It was a fucking time.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's why I really have hope. Just not that AEW would ever necessarily compete with WWF. I just have hope that they're there.
Yeah, it raises
Just
the game.
because
Rising tide lifts all boats.
it gives you an option. It gives you, if there are certain wrestlers who are just buried on the WWE card, they have an opportunity to go someplace else where they can get a look and they can grow as a performer and then come back. We started the episode just briefly talking about Cody and Seth and how Cody was in a place when he was in the WWE. And we all knew he had it. It wasn't there. Guy goes away, starts his own fucking promotion, comes back, and we're fucking eating it all up.
Because
That's
he's got
right.
it.
Because he was able to kind of do things a different way. Because there is more than one. There's more than just the WWE's path of becoming a successful wrestler. Roman Reigns probably could have really benefited from that versus just being in the machine to get to where he is now, maybe faster.
Yeah.
Faster than they pushed him. But yeah, that's my thing. Give me WWE versus anybody else. But at that time, it was the WWE versus the WCW.
Good answer.
I dig
Hell of
that.
an answer.
Good answers all the way around. Well, gentlemen, this has gone long, and dear God, I fucking love it. I would split this
This is
into
fun.
two parts,
Yeah.
but we got something real special coming up next week.
do we have?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the 49th official episode of Nothing Good. But next week, It's number 50. As Jones has said, it's the WrestleMania of Nothing Good. It's our milestone episode. And Jones, I forget, what the fuck are we going to talk about?
We're going to discuss one of the great action films of all time, so they say.
All time.
From a cinematic directorial auteur.
Yeah, from Michael Bay.
Fuck you.
From Mike Bay. We're going to sit down and attempt...
That is such a fucking dig.
I love it.
Holy shit.
Mike Bay.
His teeth are just grinding.
You're going to get a
Fucking
phone
Mike
call
Bay.
from somebody.
Jerry Bruckheimer is going to call you.
Shit. We are going to attempt to sit down as adults
Jerome Bruckheimer, according
and
to Jones.
try to talk about, was it 2005's? Mike Bay's 2005's Bad Boys 2 without someone getting punched in the fucking face.
I make no promises, both being not an adult and the one likely to get punched in the face.
So yeah, that's what we're
There's
doing.
a likelihood that could happen.
Episode 50, I'm really excited to cover this movie and hang out with my friends and all that. So that's where we are.
Well, gentlemen, this was fun. Favorite wrestling
Yes.
feuds. I love stuff like this because it gives us ideas on maybe something to tackle in even longer form than
long
this.
form, yeah.
Down the line.
I love
But
it.
we appreciate everyone joining us. Tune in next week as we hit our big milestone, episode 50. And then from there, it's only onward and upward for Nothing Good. So any last parting words?
No, thanks
Nah.
everybody for joining us on this journey and a journey of 49 episodes.
Indeed.
We'll see you next week.
Woo! Nothing Good.